Good morning. I'd like to call our Speech Language Pathology and Audiology and Hearing Aid Dispensers Board meeting to order at 9 a.m. on Friday, December 6th, 2024. I'll start with the roll call of the board members. Myself, Gilda Dominguez, Board Chair, present. Dr. Amy White.
Here.
Mr. Todd Borges.
Here.
Dr. Tamara Chambers.
Here.
Ms. Karen Chang.
Here.
Mr. John Danduran.
Here.
Dr. Charles Sanders.
Here.
Also like to ask the board staff to note who is present today as well.
Sharice Burns, I'm the interim executive officer for the board.
Yuping Lin, board counsel.
Maria Liranzo, regulation legislation analyst.
We have a quorum. Moving to agenda item 2, I'd like to ask for public comment for items not on the agenda. We have no members of the public in the room, and I'd like to ask the moderator to open for public comment at this time.
All right, we are open for public comment via WebEx. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users, dial *3 to raise your hand. And for our mobile device users, you may need to hit the ellipses button, that's the ... in order to find your hand. You have 3 different pages and only one of them has that hand button. People will be given 3 minutes to speak, and I'll give you a 30-second warning before your time expires. So now is the time to raise your hand if you'd like to make a comment for items not on the agenda. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, thank you. I'll move to agenda item number 4, review and possible approval of the September 5th through 6th, 2024 board meeting minutes. And I'd like to ask Ms. Alonzo to present this agenda item.
Thank you, Ms. Dominguez. The minutes includes the board meeting where the board sworn in a new board member, review the draft strategic plan for 2025 to 2028, held a petition hearing for reinstatement of a revoked license, and approve revisions to the approved regulations regarding processing time. Also included is the Audiology Practice Committee. Board staff recommends the board review and discuss the provided materials and determine whether or not to approve the minutes.
All right, thank you. I'd like to open it up for board discussion. Hearing none, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve these board meeting minutes for September 5th through 6th, 2024.
I move to approve the board meeting minutes from September 5th through 6th.
Thank you. May we have a second?
I second.
Thank you. I'd like to ask the moderator to open for public comment through WebEx. There are no members of the public present in the room.
We are open for public comment via WebEx on the board meeting minutes for September 5th and 6th. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. For dial-in users, dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes, please. And now I'd like to ask Ms. Burns to conduct the roll call vote.
Ms. Dominguez.
Aye.
Dr. White. Aye. Mr. Borges.
Aye.
Dr. Chambers. Aye. Ms. Chang. Aye. Mr. Danduran.
Aye.
Dr. Sanders.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right. We will go back to agenda item 3 for for acknowledgement of Mr. Paul Sanchez's service to the board. I'd like for you to come up to the front.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Oh, thank you. On behalf of the board members and the board staff, we'd like to thank you for your many years of service. We appreciate all that you have done for us and for the consumers of California. We'd like to present to you the certificate of appreciation, presented to you, and it reads, in recognition of your many years of exemplary public service and leadership as the executive officer of the board, your vigorous dedication to the protection of consumers of speech and hearing sciences, and your dependable character, integrity, and dedication to service to the Speech, Language, Pathology, and Audiology and Hearing Aid Dispensers Board from June 9th, 2014 through October 14th, 2024.
Thank you.
That's yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's quite a run, though.
I'd like to open it up for board discussion.
So I first met Paul in a Starbucks in early 2019 when he first approached me about joining the board. And somehow even after that, he still decided to recommend me. And we've worked together 5 years now, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. I appreciated your humor and your acceptance of my humor, your steady hand at the board. I do like you a little bit less now that you've left us, but that still leaves a whole lot that I admire and appreciate you. And I want to personally thank you for your time that you've given us and you've given the consumers. You were an amazing asset.
I would say, having worked with Paul prior to my joining the board with the California Academy of Audiology, the bridges that he has built between the board staff, and the professionals in the state, and outreach to students, and just all of the bridge building that's been done, I think is just so impressive, and surely we'll miss you very much.
Thank you.
I want to say, as a public member, coming in, Paul was really great with explaining everything to me, because definitely this organization I'm not that familiar with audiology and hearing aids. But thank you, Paul, for explaining everything. And you are definitely an asset to the state of California. So thank you so much, and congratulations on your.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm grateful. When Paul approached me about interest in coming to this board, I was with another board, and I've learned a ton. In the 4 years, I've only been with this board for almost 5 now. Actually, it'll be 5 in January. And then through that, we made it through the pandemic together. We figured out how to change how we do everything in the last 5 years for the better of, the community, for the staff, for the applicants, for the licensees. This wealth of knowledge. I miss it. I often think, what would Paul do? So
that's another.
I sit there and, okay, what would Paul do? What would Paul think? And then sometimes I text him and ask. Because I'm still learning. I appreciate it.
Guilty, can I say something?
Yes, can I say something first?
Yeah, go ahead.
you know what, whichever role that I was in as a board member, current board chair, you have always been so available and very engaged in any type of conversation or plans that we needed to move forward with. And I think any positive, professional character trait, that word that you can think of, I think you do demonstrate that in your daily work, in your actions, as you have led our team as well, and being supportive of everything that we are striving to do for the consumers of California. So you definitely live the mission and the vision of the board. And again, congratulations in your new role.
Thank you.
Very best. I'll give you the floor.
Thank you. Do I need to do anything here? I'm good. Okay, good. Just want to really appreciate this board. I know that I appreciate you taking time out today just for this recognition. I have been here, or I was here for about 10 years, and I came from I'd worked for other public boards before in my past, and I think the one thing that really differentiates this board from any other board is the caring professionals that I've worked for. You know, when you're on a winning team, you have to really appreciate it, because you won't always be on a winning team. It's not always that way. And I kind of see this board that way. I always appreciated it. This is probably the one organization that I've worked at where every board member, every exam proctor, every subject matter expert, every staff member, it seemed like we all understood the connection between what we do on a day-to-day basis and the consumers of California that we serve. Whether it was, you know, working, you know, serving elderly people, whether it was serving younger consumers out there, everyone seemed to understand that connection. So I greatly appreciate it. I'm very proud of the team that we have, and I think that the board office really is a reflection of the professionals on the board and the leadership that we've had. So I want to express my gratitude for your support all the years that we've had, whether we were working on the board or off the board, you know, as people that were out there kind of bridging that gap for us. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Since there is no one present for public comment in the room, I'd like to ask the moderator to open public comment on WebEx.
We are open for public comment on the acknowledgement of Paul Sanchez. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. And it looks like our first request is coming from Joe Bartlett. Hold on just a moment. We're going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
I'm so happy to have had a chance to meet you and work with you. I think that you are one of the absolute good guys when it comes to our industry, and we're a shining light on the board. And I really just appreciate all the time that we had a chance to chat together and meeting of the minds at different topics that we were working with. Sometimes we didn't necessarily always see eye to eye, but I think you always had a very great just a brain for the process and how it works, and helped us kind of stay within the lines as much as we could. So I appreciate all the time that you dedicated and spent on the board, and I wish you the best in the future.
Thank you. And that appears to be our only request for public comment on this matter.
All right, thank you. We'll close public comment at this time, and we'll move to agenda item 5, the review and possible approval of the November 1st, 2024 board meeting minutes. I'd like to ask Ms. Lorenzo to present this agenda item.
Thank you, Ms. Dominguez. The minutes includes the board meeting where the board discussed and reviewed the executive officer recruitment and selection process, reported on actions taken during a closed session regarding the appointment of an interim executive officer, and review and responded to public comments for proposed regulatory action regarding advertising for hearing aid dispensing. Board staff recommends the board to review and discuss the material and determine whether or not to approve the minutes.
I'd like to open it up for board discussion. I do have one clarification if you can make on page 204. Seventh paragraph down, with regards to me replying, wanting the board to move forward quickly. If we can change that, I remember saying efficiently. So if we can change that, that would be great.
Thank you.
I have no further statements. So hearing no further board discussion, I'll ask for a motion to approve the November 1st, 2024 board meeting minutes.
Move to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. There's no one present for public comment in the room, so I'd like to ask the moderator to open public comment on WebEx.
We are open for public comment on the motion and the November 1st board meeting minutes. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. For our mobile device users, you may need to hit the ellipses button. That's the ... in order to find your hand. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes, please. I'd like to ask Ms. Burns to conduct a roll call vote.
Ms. Dominguez?
Aye.
Dr. White? Aye. Mr. Borges?
Aye.
Dr. Chambers? Aye. Ms. Chang?
Aye.
Mr. Danduran?
Aye.
Dr. Sanders?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving to agenda item 6, the DCA update, the DCA Board and Bureau Relations. I'd like to ask Ms. Dorantes of the DCA Board and Bureau Relations to provide the update.
Good morning and happy Friday, everyone. All righty. All right, well, I think you all know me by now, but I'm Yvonne Durantes. I am the Assistant Deputy Director with Board and Bureau Relations here at DCA, and so I'm happy to be here today. I have a couple updates for you, covering a little bit of what happened in November, some stuff that's happening in December, and of course, one or two changes that are coming January 1st or early next year. So I will go ahead and get started. So effective January 1st of 2025, there are changes to the Form 700 filing. And so board members must file their Form 700 through the Fair Political Practice Commission's FPPC electronic filing system. Filings will no longer be filed via the net file. So if you recall, when you were onboarded, you did have to go through NetFile. You will no longer be going through NetFile. And so it will now be filed electronically with FPPC, and paper filings will also not be accepted anymore. So in the past, some of you may have filled out the paper, scanned it, sent it over. That is no longer an option. It will be done electronically now. And so the governor signed AB 1170, and so effective January 1st, AB 1170 requires that a Form 700 filed by a public official and board member for whom the commission is the filing officer must be filed electronically. So that's where that's coming from. And FPPC will email board members a welcome email with login credentials by December 31st. Filers can continue to use NetFile before January 1st. So if you do need to file before then, you can, but you will be receiving your login instructions for beginning. If you do have any additional questions or this doesn't make sense, I'm happy to further clarify, and you're welcome to email us as well. Moving on to our DEI update. And so DCA's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Steering Committee did meet on October 25th, And they did elect Reggie Varghese as our chair. He is from the medical board, and Marlon McManus as the vice chair, and he is from the Board of Behavioral Sciences. And with Reggie and Marlon's years of experience and sincere commitment, we look forward to their leadership and all of the initiatives that they will accomplish. And the next DEI steering committee is next Friday, December 13th. And so more to come. Moving on to our new unconscious bias training for board members. DCA is updating its current unveiling unconscious bias training to focus on board members due to your critical roles and how unconscious bias can affect your decision-making authority. The training will be self-paced and available in DCA's online learning management. And we anticipate launching this new training in early 2000. Board members will be required to take it annually. As a reminder, DCA does also offer over 20 online DEI training courses on its learning management system. And although these 20 training courses are not mandatory, we do highly encourage that you take those, as a lot of work and dedication has been put into those to allow those to be a tool and resource for you. So highly encourage that you check those out. Moving on to our military licensing resources webinar. To support and maximize outreach to our military community, DCA hosted a second live webinar on November 21st and to share information about military licensing resources. And during the webinar, attendees learned about licensing resources available to members of the military and their spouses or domestic partners. The webinar featured a demonstration of DCA's Federal Professional License Portal and state registration process and Q&A session. And since we are in the season of giving, DCA is honored to have joined in the annual charitable campaigns, or the DCA's annual Turkey Drive and the state's Our Promise campaign. And so on November 13th, DCA held its annual Turkey Drive and collected over 2,000 pounds of food, including 110 turkeys, to help local families in need to celebrate Thanksgiving and feed their families through Sacramento-based Joey's Food Locker that's here in Natomas. Donations were collected and were made available to families during Food Locker's Turkey Drive on November 22nd. Last year, DCA's employees were part of the reason that 769 families, 3,315 people celebrated Thanksgiving and were able to feed their families. So we are really excited to be able to share this and to continue this tradition here at DCA. And lastly, the Our Promise campaign did launch, and so this is the State Employees Giving at Work campaign. And so every year through this campaign, state employees, including board members, have the opportunity to support nonprofits of their choice or that they are passionate about through either payroll deductions or one-time donations, and these contributions have a really positive impact. And so this year, our campaign is being led by Monica Vargas, our Deputy Director of Communications, and Karen Navarro, our Assistant Deputy Director of Communications. And so DCA's campaign officially launched on November 18th and will be running through December 31st. And so if you do have any questions or would like to donate, we highly recommend that you do so. So that is all that I have for you today. Happy to take any questions at this time.
Hearing no further board discussion, we'll go ahead and ask the moderator to open up for public comment on WebEx, since there are no public members present in the room.
We are open for public comment on the DCA update. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users, dial *3 to raise your hand. and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, please. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 7, Board Chair's report. I'd like to highlight that we have completed all of our meetings for 2024, and our first meeting for 2025 is scheduled for February 21st. Also included in the report is the summary of the standing committees and the members on those respective committees. And we do have one vacancy in the SLP practice committee. I'd like to move on to the board committee reports. I'd like to ask Mr. Borges to provide an update on the hearing aid dispensing committee meeting.
Thank you. At our committee meeting this time, we discussed codifying dome removal training and certification for hearing aid dispensers, as it's something that has become very prevalent and needs to be addressed and updated. We discussed how to receive the training and who we would receive the training from, how far, contraindications of when we cannot do the dome removal, how far the dome down in the ear canal, where we would have to refer them to a doctor for the dome removal. And we asked the board to take our notes and put them together so we can review it again at the next meeting and at some point present to the full board.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Dr. White to provide an update on the Audiology Practice Committee meeting.
Good morning. The Practice Committee met yesterday and discussed final kind of wording and edits at the committee level for the possible action to amend the regulations regarding the general application requirements and also some of the training and supervisory requirements for speech language pathology and audiology aids, as stated in Title 16. Minor edits were made during the committee meeting yesterday, and a motion carried to initiate the rulemaking process and bring forward the final language to the board for consideration.
Thank you. I'll provide an update regarding the Speech Language Pathology Practice Committee. We also did meet yesterday, and we discussed 2 topics. The first of which was pertaining to the speech language pathology assistant scope of practice regarding the performance of oral pharyngeal swallowing therapy with bolus material. So during that meeting, we concurred that we need to obtain further information and conduct further research regarding the assistant's training and education curriculum, as well as obtaining information regarding the occupational therapy assistant, the COTAs, training and education and their curriculum as well before we move forward with any further discussion. So we wanted to reconvene, and once we obtain that information and look at some other articles for reference, we will further discuss this. We also discussed the supervision for the aides, and we also addressed if the speech pathologist needs to be physically present during the patient care, and we discussed that the clarity is indicated regarding the exception to the requirement, because there is a statement in there that says that you can propose an exception to this requirement, and then it is reviewed. So we wanted to ask the board to see if there have been any requests for an exception to the requirement of having the speech language pathologist physically in the room. And also, just out of curiosity, on actually how many aides do we have currently in the state? We feel that I think the majority are probably for audiology, but it would be of interest to see how many that we have for speech language pathology as well. If we don't see that many, then we felt that it probably wasn't going to be a problem of removing the statement for that accommodation request. So those are the two topics that we discussed. Now, I felt like I was getting into the weeds on doing a lot of research about the assistants, especially regarding their scope of practice for feeding and swallowing in light of the CODAs having job postings that do indicate that they would be doing feeding and swallowing therapy as well. So I think, Sharice, you said a term that was enlightening the limitation, right?
Yeah.
What's that term again?
Unnecessary limitation.
Yeah, unnecessary limitation that we may be posing onto the speech language pathology assistants if CODAs are doing the same thing. But we need to see if also that is okay to do they can do that anyways. So a lot of moving pieces to that. I'd like to open up for board discussion. Hearing none, I'd like to ask the moderator to open for public comment on WebEx since there are no members of the public present here at this time.
We are open for public comment on agenda item 7 in the board chair's report. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, please. Thank you. I'd like to move to agenda item 8, the executive officer's reports, interim executive officer's reports.
Wasn't sure if I should change the title or not. Or just say I'm in. All right, good morning. So obviously our first up is the administrative update that Paul has left to take the promotional position at the Department of Industrial Relations. The board met via teleconference on November 1st and made myself interim. And also that kicked off the job posting that was posted the week after. It does close today. So the search committee or selection committee will be working together to review applications. And then February 21st, the first board meeting next year, will be your opportunity to do in-person interviews. So just due to the process and we'll have to have that staged kind of set up. Other than that, the board is fully staffed at the moment. So we are all up and running, well, minus an assistant executive officer, obviously. There's only one of me now, too. So we have that vacancy. Outreach update, I didn't put it on here. I didn't think about it as a traditional outreach item, so I'll just go ahead and add it verbally. On Saturday, November 16th, I did attend virtually the dental hygiene board meeting, and they were discussing oromyofunctional therapy and its use in dental hygiene profession. So it was interesting conversations that to some extent encroach into the speech language pathology practice and profession. So it was a good idea for, number one, for me to listen in and to see what the conversation is. And then number two, to also make it very clear that any oral myofunctional therapy used for the purposes of speech, swallowing, the rest, that would fall into our scope of practice for speech language pathologists, and just make that very clear so that those people understood. There definitely seemed to be in prior discussions at that board, maybe a lack of understanding that they might be crossing into other scopes of practice that are already defined in the state of California. So it's always good for us to watch other board meetings and then attend when needed. And so we'll continue to monitor that issue. Again, if they want to do it for dental hygiene, that's their own. But for any of the purposes of speech, we'll be keeping an eye out and comment when necessary. So that could have gone in the outreach. I didn't think of it as general outreach, but that's kind of out there. Next up is the budget report. So if you look at the attachments, you'll see that we have the expenditure projections. So once we get to fiscal month 3, we usually can actually start making projections. Usually there's not enough data. So as you'll see in there, this is at month 3, so as of September 30th, and we have a 2.8% surplus, which would be a reversion that we go back, and generally anywhere from 3 to 6% is perfectly fine. You'll notice in there that everything is more normal and that we've readjusted our contracting for printing. As I think some of you noticed last meeting that, oh, that printing budget line was really high compared to prior years, but it just included two encumbered contracts, one that was being off-boarded and one that was being on-boarded. So now that that is taken off of there, it looks a lot more normal. So those are the projections for right now, nice and healthy, and takes into account all of that. The next up is our fund condition. So you will see in the fund condition that last year we reverted $1.9 million, so 6.9 months in reserve, and that we are looking good in the coming years. Of course, this is always conservative on the revenues, and then maximum expenditures is what the projection is. None of this includes what's coming up in the next governor's budget, which is not out yet and not public. So, of course, we'll have changes as they come along, and we'll make you aware of those at that time. We are still working with the Department of Finance regarding our plans for the budget reductions that were mandated by the governor. We still await decision on that, and we will let you know, my guess is at the next meeting, what all of those plans are to achieve that 7.95% reduction to the OE&E, which is Operations Expense and Equipment section, since we already had the drill for staff vacancies. So that's already been completed. So everything on the fiscal side, healthy and looking good. Up next is the regulations report. You have a separate one further on in the agenda, but these are the list of all the pending rulemaking files that go through the DCA process and then the official rulemaking process. The biggest thing is that in the past 2 years, we've completed 7 rulemaking files, which for a board of our size is a big accomplishment. And we should have news by the end of this year on 1 additional package. So that would make 8 in the last 2 years. So very big pushes. We have many more to go, but we are making significant progress considering our size and our limited resources. So very proud of our regulations staff member and then also their work. On to licensing. Overall licensing timeframes have continued to maintain the dramatic improvements we've been seeing. We are continuing to evaluate the online licensing program and the application processes. We started 1 year post-implementation, so we finalized all of our last applications in February of 2023, and then we are looking at it from 1 year after that. So the highlights are that we have a 90% adoption rate of the online application, so that is fantastic. Most everyone is going online, which means there's the benefit of efficiency and streamlining in the process, both for staff and applicants, so that's fantastic. Oftentimes when we've rolled out online renewals, it is a slower ramp up, so this is definitely a very good adoption rate. Application processing timeframes have an overall average reduction of 59% compared to 2020, 2021, and 2022. In the chart below, you'll see these are average processing times in weeks. So yes, during our project, the numbers went up significantly from the fall of 2022 through the fall of 2023, at which point we were rolling out, catching up, reducing the backlog, and then once into 2024, you'll notice the 2 and 1 week timeframes is pretty consistent.
That's amazing.
Which is a fabulous reduction. And I would also point out that these reductions are at a time when we had staff turnover. And so that means we were down a little bit in the office staff-wise. So achieving these reductions, the confluence of the system, the advances, the efficiencies, and staffing all came together beautifully. So these are wonderful things. You'll see the biggest reductions are during our what we call peak time frames that ramp up in the summer after a lot of speech language pathologists graduate, and through the summer into the fall. So we do hope to continue to see that. The other item I want to highlight, and it'll also dovetail with the licensing statistics, it's something Paul and I noticed the last time we were looking at data. We were seeing an increase in the number. So the 27% increase in the applications per analyst that we were able to process in that year. So that is an outgrowth we didn't expect, to be able to actually just increase capacity with the same number of staff. So that's a fantastic increase for us. And so hopefully that continues on. I would be interested in looking at the data a little later to see how much growth we're getting in the California population versus also we're getting lots of out-of-state applications as well. A lot more teletherapy being provided, so a lot more out-of-state applications. So
Is that for speech and audiology?
it's speech and audiology, but mostly speech. We are seeing a lot of that. We are seeing, thanks to our last sunset, the addition of the reciprocity. Well, it's kind of like reciprocity. It's not exactly reciprocity, but the ability to use your triple CA or your ABA certification through AAA for audiologists that are out of state. That has helped as well. So that helps kind of streamline it when they're coming in from out of state. So that it's like reciprocity. It's not the same though. It's not that you have a license in another state and come here. It does streamline the process. And then I kept the chart that was previously provided to you as well. That was more of a snapshot in time just based on weeks. So figured it's never bad to see us go from 10 weeks to 1 week within a year. So that's a fabulous thing to look at, and we'll keep that. We also have in your materials the licensing statistics. So you'll see we continue to grow and significantly in the number of license issues. From 22-23, we went from 3,934 to 5,322. So that is a significant jump. We hope to continue seeing that growth. And then licensee population, this does include active, inactive, and delinquent, because delinquents can become active at any point in time providing their CE and their reactivation fee. We include them all. So they are all under our jurisdiction. As you continue to see, we have growth, but we do see a little bit of drop off in some of the changes DCA is making to their data. We will see more emphasis on active licensees versus including everyone in that lump number. So it will be interesting to kind of drill down a little more and be looking at how many are staying active, what are we looking at, and later on when I discuss sunset, dovetailing into some other areas that might help our licensing numbers be a little cleaner. So that is the licensing report. The practical examination. The previous practical examination was held in September 20th through 21st, and the data is provided below. You'll see there was a 73% passage rate, 27% fail rate, and then the most recent examination was held on November 22nd and 23rd, and the results were not available at the time we wrote the report, so you'll get that information in February. On to the enforcement report. The board has received 99 complaints and subsequent arrest notifications that combined both during the first quarter. During the same period, the board has not issued any citations and fines. There are currently 12 formal discipline cases pending with the Attorney General's office, and the board is currently monitoring 15 probationers, of which 6 require drug or alcohol testing, and 4 that are in a told status. So they are not practicing in the state, they are out of state, they're not working. And the disciplinary actions are also provided for you. Next time you'll see a lot more updates on there. And then within the complaints and intake, everything is looking about on par. We've had 2 new staff members in the unit, so there's been a significant amount of training in the last few months, so there is a little bit less in the closure category than we might normally have, but we are ramping up, so that training is now complete. The CE auditor has been doing the first CE audit since 2018, and the other enforcement analyst is plugging away at the cases that are open. So that is all of those, and then of course, you all see when there's mail votes, and so everything will look a little more robust in the next quarter. So, are there any questions about the interim executive officer report?
The processing times in weeks, that's very impressive. So great work to you and the office staff for managing that.
They're a fabulous team, very proud of them.
I have a question about registering for the practical exam. Is that available online now, or is that still just in person or by mail?
It's in person or by mail still.
Still?
So one of the interesting issues with the practical exam is the filing period. And trying to figure out a way to take the application up, take it down, make the links not work during the times that they're not in an open filing period. So we've still been trying to figure out how we want to adapt that. And of course, at the same time, the regulation would change it to where we don't need that, and we could just make the online application available. We did build it. We built all the framework so that we could launch when we're ready to do just the practical. But there's a few things we still need to figure out if we're going to do it with a filing period. So that has been the difficulty, unfortunately. But we look forward to that.
Can I ask a question about the budget report?
Yeah.
Yes.
The office administrative hearings and the equipment seem like they've really gone down. Are those, do you think that those are going to maintain their kind of like low status, or is there concern that those will increase?
The equipment is often what we request. So in budget years that are tight, we determine not to ask for equipment unless something breaks. We won't ask for anything, so it would be smaller. Everything we do is self-funded. So our fund is the account that all the expenditures come out of. So even though we're not part of the general fund, we still try to be very conservative in those years when the state budget has difficulty. So part of that is also the guidelines we get for requesting equipment is, you know, if it ain't broke, don't go buy it. Right now we don't have any plans to buy any equipment. We have 2 somewhat newer copiers, print copy, no faxing, but scanning and the rest. So we have enough equipment since we moved in 2021 that we've upgraded that hopefully nothing other than maybe a laptop or 2 will go out. So we did not request anything as part of the normal equipment schedule. So that's why that went down. Office of Administrative Hearing, it's always a projection depending on how many hearings we have. So when we're at board meetings, you'll see them as petition hearings. But as well, anytime a citation is appealed, they go to the Office of Administrative Hearings and have an official appeal hearing there. You also have it when we're going for discipline in the case. Before you guys get the decision, the ALJ hears the case at the Office of Administrative Hearing, one of the hearing locations. There was a lull in that first quarter, and there's always a delay for OA8, Office of Administrative Hearings billing. So my guess is probably by next budget report, you'll see that go up a little. Not extensive, but up a little. So that cost often just depends. I mean, how many stipulated settlements versus administrative law judge decisions are you seeing? Our first two petition hearings in a few years will be the one in September and then another next year. So that will increase a little, but you won't see it until it hits, and it's usually a few months later. Generally, Department of Justice and Office of Administrative Hearing Billing, usually more than 3 months behind. So often it's kind of our best guesstimate based on the last 3 years, but it can go up significantly after that. So one thing I would tell you is that there are 2 exceptions in the budget. So to get our budget, we essentially say, Governor and Legislature, we think we're going to spend this much, we need this much for our budget. It gets approved, they pull the money out of what we call the fund or the savings account, and then you have to stay within that amount, right, and budget within it. The exceptions being, you can't always determine when disciplinary matters are going to come around. So there is a process. If we actually expend too much in the Office of Administrative Hearings or for the Department of Justice for they're representing us as the legal team, we have special provisions that we can request augmentation. So if that would blow our budget, right? Say that we just have a banner year and everybody appeals and we have lots of hearings. If that's going to blow the budget, we can ask for that augmentation for that year, and they'll take it directly out of that so that it doesn't blow the budget, because it's one of the 2 specialty exceptions. So.
Thanks for the presentation.
I have a question, just out of curiosity. The examiners, where is their pay? Where is that built into? What line item is that?
So they are in C&P external is where their per diem comes out of, but their travel comes in and out of the travel in state. So it does get dispersed out. There's a couple different areas. They're not all in one line item on this. I wish it was. That would be really handy for me. Unfortunately, it is not. So it has to go in its separate categories, and so it gets all over the place. One thing we have to do is actually manually track all of that. Every year we have to do a Section 139 report where we report to the legislature the actual cost of the examinations. So we do separately track it in a spreadsheet, you know, all of the travel, all of the per diem, all of the TSI contracts. TSI is the vendor that does the computerized knowledge exam for the written exam for hearing aid dispensing. It also does the Office of Professional Examination Services contract. So we put all of that into that spreadsheet and tracking, and that's what we use to do our Section 139 report. So I wish it was a little cleaner and it was all in one spot, but I don't get to.
And the Section 139 is public information, which can be found in the DCA annual report. So you are all welcome to take a look at what it looks like in the past.
Buried on page 300.
As I said, towards the end.
Towards the end.
Getting one of the hard.
Well, and it all rolls it up anyway. So it's one lump sum, like how much did it cost for all of it? And then, of course, they lump together. So. Similar to when we do occupational analysis for speech and audiology, that gets reported in the cost there as well.
Thank you. Regarding the practical exam, have you noticed a trend regarding a certain part or aspect of the exam that is contributing to the fail rate?
I would suggest that people really should read and study the candidate handbook. The candidate handbook and the knowledge and tasks go over everything that's covered in it, and it's even got some bolded sections to remind you of certain things that are safety, and they will be stopped for those unsafe techniques. And so they should really review all of the materials. The number of people that apply and then say, I didn't even know this material was on your website is often flabbergasting. So we do, when we set them up, in their emails and letters, we remind them multiple times to review the candidate handbook and the knowledge and tasks. And then one thing I also tell people is, time yourself. When you're working in your clinic, you're not on a timer. So when you're doing your practice for the exam, you should try to do a practice round. Try to do the whole thing in the time allotted. The candidate handbook tells you how much time you have. Go ahead and try and do it as a timed event. Because I think sometimes they just get so nervous.
And they run out of time?
Some run out of time, but oftentimes, you know, when you do something and it's unsafe, we have to stop you. It's not me, but our examiners, our proctors have to stop you. So, you know, practice it in a timed space. I think that really would help.
And that's why the fail rate goes in waves, right? It'll be high and then it'll be low because of the repeats. So now what to anticipate, right? And then it's going to probably be high again, and then it'll be lower. And it just has a tendency to do that. You can see it in the numbers from one report to the next.
The other big thing would be don't apply until you feel you're ready. I know everyone's on a timer, but we've had it before. They apply, they just want to get on that thing as soon as they pass the written, but they haven't been practicing. They're not fully ready. So, you know, we do 4 to 5 of them a year. Apply when you're ready. It's never good to be coming up and you're asking for help when you get there. So don't come until you're ready, and study and do a timed.
And it seems like the students.
I was going to say, there's a number of students taking it, and they're maybe in their first year of their program or the second year of the program, because a lot of the programs require you to get that before they graduate. So it's like before they've even really been in a lot of patient care. In some cases,
Programs that we're familiar with, there has not been a licensed audiologist who is also dispensing audiologist on staff at these universities.
Right.
And so they're learning from unlicensed people.
or they're just from their internship experiences, which are like, you know, you don't get a lot of hands-on when you're in your first year of your program, and then you're sitting there taking this exam in your second year.
Okay.
So.
There's a lot of very bright people, so it's not the same, they take it once.
Yeah.
Now I know what to do.
They also get very nervous because they're.
Some people are just bad test takers.
Exactly.
They know how to test takers.
One of the things I would say is that during the pandemic, we had to make adjustments to the exams for safety and sanitation protocol. And one of the best things we've done is those changes. It used to be each section was separate. So you did section A in one room, you did it, you stopped, then you had to wait, and then you had to go to a different room on a different floor and do section B. Mm-hmm. So what it would do is they just got into the groove, timer's up, okay, move out, then you get in the hallway, you get nervous, you're thinking about what you did, you're nervous about the next section, and who knows, in between in the shuffle, maybe you even have to wait because there's not a room available for you. Mm-hmm. It is now in one room. They do both sections. It was the first and most important thing we noticed from all of my proctors is that once they're in there, once they get past their nerves, if they do, they're able to just continue to flow. So it's helpful that who would have expected a pandemic, right? Mm-hmm. So, but one of the outgrowths has been, let's not split it back up again. Let's make sure that what we're trying to test for is the knowledge and practical ability and not how much you can tame your nerves if I pull you in and out of a room all the time.
Yeah. Makes sense. All right, thank you. Oh. Yeah.
Any other questions about my report?
All right, there are no members of the public here. I'd like to ask the moderator to open for public comment on WebEx.
We are open for public comment on agenda item 8. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users, dial *3 to raise your hand. And as a reminder to our mobile device users, you may need to hit the ellipses button. That's the ... in order to find your hand. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, please. So we'll move on to agenda item number 9, the Board 2025 through 2028 Strategic Plan Review and Approval. I'd like to ask Ms. Burns to present information on the draft 2025-2028 Board Strategic Plan.
All right, so attached is the proposed 2025 to 2028 Board Strategic Plan. It was developed by the board during the June 12th and also amended in the September 5th through 6th board meeting. The plan outlines the board's strategic objectives towards fulfilling its mission for the next 4 years, just in time before we start going into sunset. And we also went through and extensively looked at wording and prioritization so that everything can be used to its maximum extent by staff. Are there any edits, typos, questions? Hopefully we captured all the numbering and bingo properly.
I'd hate to be the guy to say it out loud.
That's a good point. Yeah, we will amend that. Thank you for catching it. We will most likely have to adopt it with interim and myself.
Quick question. I meant to ask this when we're going over your report before we go any farther. This jogged my memory and I'm looking at the board members. Where are we on the process of filling that second public member slot?
And the speech pathology.
Or the
No movement currently. I have not had any requests, not even a peep. I'm hoping that in the new year, we'll be able to kind of push again. It's rare, well, it's rare to me, but it turns out it's actually quite common for other boards to have vacancies for a lot longer, similar to how long the hearing aid dispenser was empty for quite some time, unfortunately. I just have been lucky in my prior experiences, and vacancies were always filled quite quickly. Usually, especially the Senate and Assembly, were much faster than anything else. And that apparently was just a luck of the draw at the time, and more boards and bureaus are much more common to not have, to have vacancies for a whole term or more. So I'm going to keep pushing. I'm going to fire it up. I kind of wanted to get through the election, so refocusing afterwards. So hopefully we can kind of get that going. But if you happen to know any public members or people that like to serve on boards, maybe mention it and contact the Senate office. Or if you know any speech pathologists that would be interested, maybe recommend it. I know the governor can't, I mean, they only get applications if they're submitted. So they don't tell us how many they get. We only get a call if they're even considering something. So it's usually later in that process. No worries.
Probably just by myself.
Were there any other edits, typos? We got all the prioritizations correct? If that's all good, I'll go ahead and ask that the board, after their review, make a motion to approve it. I will tell you that the next steps after this, after you've reviewed and approved it, we will finalize it and get it ready for publication. But the next step for staff is actually to take what you all have done and actually drill down and make objectives underneath those, and then try to figure out when in the next 4 years we'll be able to do each of those. Obviously as a plan, and we'll see where we go from there, but that's always the plan.
You know when we'll see those objectives? Would it be in the February meeting? Or?
You know, we don't normally, I've not seen at this board where they normally provide it, but we can.
Oh, okay.
It's usually done with additional objectives underneath, and then kind of what quarter, what year the plan is to adopt it. But yeah, we can share that at the next, I don't know if it'll be ready for February. It'll most likely be ready for April. So, because I know after you adopt this meeting, within the next month, we'll start meeting with them. With Solid, sorry. Solid helps the staff. They sit down with us and they say, who's going to do it? What's the objective to accomplish that? How do we think we'll get there? And when?
I think I've seen something like a document like this before.
Yeah. Way back. Yeah, we can start bringing it out. I think it's never bad to look at it, especially at the end of every fiscal year and say, hey, where are we at? What did we have to move? What did we pull up instead of doing that? Or occasionally, you know, the strategic plans ask us to look at something and we have to say, we looked at it, here's what we found, and at the moment we can't do anything with it. But sometimes that also is, but we're ready to do something when the opportunity becomes available. Or this is really something that's outside our wheelhouse, and barring something amazing coming along, we probably won't achieve it. I don't think we have many of those in this current strategic plan, but it's happened before. So.
All right, hearing no further board discussion, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the board 2025 through 2028 strategic plan.
The strategic plan?
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. I'd like to ask the moderator to open public comment on WebEx. There are no members of the public present at this time in the room.
We are open for public comment via WebEx for agenda item 9 and the strategic plan. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes, please. I'd like to ask Ms. Burns to conduct the roll call vote at this time.
Ms. Dominguez.
Aye.
Dr. White. Aye. Mr. Borges.
Aye.
Dr. Chambers. Aye. Ms. Chang.
Aye.
Mr. Dandurand.
Aye.
Dr. Sanders.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to proceed with a 15-minute break, and we will resume with agenda item 10 after the break. And we're going to call our board meeting back to order.
We'll resume with agenda item 10.
So I was just trying to see if he was going to say anything. So we'll start with agenda item 10, regulatory report, update review, and possible action on board regulation packages. I'd like to ask Ms. Lorenzo to provide the regulatory report at this time. She will take up discussion of item 10E separately after her regulatory report.
Thank you, Ms. Dominguez. The first item on my report is continuing education requirements for hearing aid dispensers. This regulatory proposal was approved and filed with the Secretary of State by the Office of Administrative Law on August 14th, and they became effective on October 1st. For more information, visit our website. This proposed regulatory change increased the number or indirect client care courses, permit other opportunities to fulfill the CE requirements, and align these regulations with continuing professional development regulatory requirements the board has for licensees in the practices of speech-language pathology and audiology. The next item in the report is a continuing professional development requirement for SLPs and audiologists. This regulatory proposal was approved and filed with the Secretary of State by the Office of Administrative Law on September 6th. These regulations will become effective on January 1st, 2025. For more information, visit our website. This proposed regulatory change will clarify definitions to reflect advancements made to SLP and audiology CPD courses delivered online, increase the number of self-study hours to half of the total required hours, remove limitations to increase the number of hours that could be attained from courses that are related to the practice, increase the number of hours that can be obtained from indirect patient-client care courses to 25%, permit other opportunities to fulfill the CPD requirements, and clarify current regulations by making those CPD requirements consistent with the board's CPD audit process and professional learning requirements for similar license types and course content. Item C is advertising for hearing aid dispensing. This regulatory proposal was initially noticed to the public on November 17, 2023, and submitted for OAL for review on August 28, 2024. The board withdrew it on October 8th and noticed it for public comment. The board approved final responses to public comment on November 1st and resubmitted the rulemaking for review on November 13th. And we expect a response from Office of Administrative Law by December 31st. And if approved, will become effective April 1st, 2025. This proposed regulatory change will clarify that anyone licensed to dispense hearing aids can advertise the fitting and selling of hearing aids in accordance with Business and Profession Code Section 651 and California Code of Regulations 1399.127, information required in advertisement, prohibited advertisements, and national advertisements disseminated in California. Next item on the report is processing times. The board approved revisions to the proposed regulatory text on September 24th. It should actually say September 6th. That's a typo at the last board meeting. As of October 9th, 2024, board staff is preparing the regulatory package for department review. This proposed regulatory change will remove processing time and references to processing times in multiple regulation sections. Item E is the audiology license requirement related to supervised clinical experience. This regulatory proposal is in the rule preparing regulatory package phase and requires review and approval by the board. I do have a memo and materials for that discussion. This proposed regulatory change will codify the number of clock hours of supervised clinical practice required for audiology licensures applicants who have completed an audiology doctoral program. The next item on the report, item F, is hearing aid dispensers training and temporary licensee supervision. The board approved revision to the proposed regulatory text on August 25th, 2023. As of May 1, 2024, board staff is preparing the regulatory package for departmental review. This proposed regulatory change will clarify that supervision is required for the entire duration of the trainee or temporary license, specify different levels of supervision, require higher level of supervision during the first 90 days of supervision, specify task and knowledge supervisors must provide to trainees, require supervisors to complete a trainee in supervision, specify criteria to request a waiver to supervise more than one trainee or temporary license holder, make requirements applicable to all temporary license types who require supervision, and make requirements to all license types who can supervise. The next item is item G, general application requirements and HAD and dispensing audiology exam requirements. The board approved revisions to the proposed regulatory text on December 1, 2023. As of April 14, 2024, board staff is preparing the regulatory package for departmental review. This proposed regulatory change will codify general application requirements such as expedited licensure process, make current the written and practical examinations process, codify the written and practical examination application forms, and their examination fees, change the practical examination appeal deadline, specify a deadline for the board to notify an applicant of its decision on their practical examination appeal, and change the hearing aid dispenser examination requirements for applicants of a dispensing audiology license. The next item is item H, approve institutions. The board approved revisions to the proposed regulatory text on August 25th, 2023. As of August 13th, 2024, board staff is preparing the regulatory package for departmental review. This proposed regulatory change will permit the board to review and approve accrediting bodies who wish to provide accreditation to programs where individuals can complete the academic and clinical requirements for licensure in the practices of SLP or audiology. And then the last item is fingerprint requirements. The board approved revisions to the proposed regulatory text on May 13th, 2022. As of September 9th, 2022, the board staff is preparing the regulatory package for departmental review. This proposed regulatory change will require licensees who were initially licensed to prior to January 1st, 1999, or for whom an electronic fingerprint record does not exist to be fingerprinted as a condition of renewal. And then attached are the stages of the regulatory process. And that completes my report.
On that last one, did you mean as of September 9th, 2024?
No.
You actually started preparing it?
Yeah, this
2 years
one.
ago.
Yeah,
Okay.
this one was a backlog, and I came across some fiscal impact, which requires either additional staff or find a way how to decrease the workload. So it has been on hold because of that issue.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, I'd like to open it up for board discussion on the regulatory report. Hearing none, I'd like to ask the moderator to open public comment on WebEx. There are no members of the public present.
We are open for public comment on agenda item 10, the regulatory report. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, please. Thank you. I'd like to now ask Ms. Lorenzo to present information to the board on agenda item 10E.
10E is proposed rulemaking, discussion and possible action to consider changes to previously proposed text and reauthorization of a regular rulemaking to amend regulations regarding audiology supervised clinical experience. As stated in the California Code of Regulations, section 1399.152.2. This proposed regulatory action will amend the regulations to state the number of clock hours of supervised clinical practice required for audiology licensure applicants who completed an audiology doctoral program before and after January 1st, 2008. Senate Bill 821 changed the entry level licensing requirements for audiologists from at least a master's degree to a doctoral degree to reflect updated industry and educational standards. However, regulations were not promulgated to specifically state the number of clock hours of supervised clinical practice required for audiology licensure applicants who have completed an audiology doctoral program. On February 23, 2023, the Audiology Practice Committee concluded that it remained appropriate to require applicants who completed an audiology doctoral program on or after January 1st, 2008 to complete 300 clock hours of supervised clinical practice, which is the same number of hours required for applicants who completed at least a master's degree on or before December 31st, 2007. The board first adopted proposed text on December 1st, 2007, 2023. In preparing the documents for the rulemaking, board staff and DCA Legal identified additional changes. In subsection A, we have defined supervised clinical practice, which required us relettering the subsequent sections. And then we also amended subsection B to create paragraphs 1, 2, and 3 from existing text. We also amended D to change the date from after December 31st, 1992 to on or after January 1st, 1993. We did similar changes to E, and then amended subsection G, a cross-reference to another subsection. We do have discussion question that was brought up. Should master's degree be specified in subsection E instead of mirroring subsection C and D? If you can take a look at the text in those sections. The rationale is that a graduate program is traditionally understood to include both a master's or doctorate degree. So having two subsections with the same requirements is not necessary unless we specify the degree type.
Yeah, so my opinion on that one would be there's no need to specify master's, just a graduate program like the other subsection would be fine. Because it doesn't matter, go by the date.
Do we have a record of how many master's degrees are out there still without an AUD statewide?
We would have to look at the license issued before the date.
I'm agreeing with you, basically. I don't know that there's that many master's degree licensees that are out there, so I don't know.
That require hours.
One, it still has the date range here as being a limit of 2007, which is when the program switched from a master's to a doctoral requirement. So
the one thing I do want to bring up, though, is just a caution. So we do still get out-of-state audiologists coming in, and they graduated long ago. They have a master's. They've been licensed for 20, however many years, but they do use the provision still for the master's. So I hesitate to remove something or change something if we have a shortage of providers in the audiology profession, and we have those that have been practicing a long time that come in and they're using them. Technically, they've got to apply here, so they've got to fall under one of the two categories. So that's the only reason
That would be similar for Canada too.
But are we saying under E, it would just say?
So what we did, because before the text said completed their graduate program, and so we just replicated the same sentence for E and F. The changes would be that for E, it would say master's program, completed at least a master's program. And then for F, it would say completed their doctoral program. So that's the change that we're seeking to do.
So you're wanting to leave the differentiation in because we are actually having people from out of state with just master's applying. We don't have that clarification. You're afraid they're not going to apply because it doesn't say.
I'm not really worried they're not going to apply. I think it's just clear with set of requirements they have to fulfill.
They're both 300.
But the requirement.
They are both 300 hours.
The same requirement.
So that
is this more of a legal thing to have clarity on one versus the other?
It's often easier just to cite a separate section.
Okay.
So that's not really a necessary, but it is easier when you're saying you meet E versus you meet F. But they are the same 300 hours, and interestingly, they are still across the three clinical settings. So
I think the only reason it was called out was because prior to December 2007, you had to have a master's, and afterwards you had to have a doctorate. Yes, but I don't know that.
Now,
I guess I don't understand why that is necessary to differentiate.
Because it's the same number of hours,
right?
Probably okay.
Right.
We do have the other sections that talk about just the degree requirement.
and putting them together in one section, saying a master's program or doctoral program.
Just a graduate program.
Yeah, I mean, you're putting it in one, just combining them into one paragraph and just saying.
Probably be fine. It's just.
Yeah, because we would, if that's the case, technically, you know, I was talking to Dal, that technically we don't need E and F then, essentially.
Right.
But if in the event you ever want to change the requirements for a doctoral program, we would have to create like a section for that, and that's how it would look like.
Right. So right now, obviously, the doctoral programs get, I think it's like 600 or more hours, actually. So the 300 is obviously well below what they require. So, but they determined to stay with it. So.
Where's the section where it says 300, or not the clock hours, but the master's, at least the master's degree on or before?
It's statutory.
Okay, which separate?
0.2.
0.25?
For the degrees? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's in the Practice Act.
Okay, I think it's like 25, 30, 0.2,
yeah, 0.2 and then 0.25. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think the rationale when it was being drafted was that because the education requirements have been changed and they wanted to address it in the regulation, that if you distinguish it now, then in the event that it just happens that the numbers have been the same, but if in the future you ever want to change it, then this makes it easier because you just plug in the new number.
Instead of adding a new section.
Right. And so,
those of which are regulatory changes, so it's up to you guys, so.
Yeah, it's just by preference. This just makes it easier to edit in the future or amend in the future. If there ever comes a time where they find that they want to change the clock hours to distinguish, they're different, but between the.
Yep.
My guess is that the graduate institutions never want to be told.
Yeah, right, I don't.
So it could be combined, so you could move it back. If that's what the board would like.
Yes, sure.
Are we looking to, it sounds like eliminate E and F? And just
combine it.
Combine it? Okay, so, yes, graduate program instead of master's, and we'll get rid of F.
And then G becomes F.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then
G becomes F.
Yes, that's correct. G becomes F, and
Efficient.
I think that's it. Down, do you have any?
And then it would just on or after January 1st, 1993. The distinction between the dates when the statutory change was made. Is that right?
Because you wouldn't need it.
It's just on or after January.
Right. Graduate program.
And then I do want to know, one change we did do was for A, we came across different terms for supervised clinical experience, clinical practicum, and clinical experience. So there we're just defining that they all mean the same thing. And that's because professional organizations use one term, schools will use another term, and then we'll use we'll alternate between the two because everyone's using the two terms. So that's there for just clarity purpose.
Okay. Any further board discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to ask for a motion regarding this agenda item, and there are suggested motion language on page 2 of 2.
What about the changes?
It'll be as amended at the end instead of as noticed.
Okay. Oh, I can do it. I move to rescind the prior proposed text and approve the proposed regulatory changes for 16 CCR section 1399.152.2 as provided in the materials, and direct staff to submit the text to the Director of the Department of Consumer Affairs and the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency for review. Authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process, make any non-substantive changes to the package, and set the matter for a hearing if requested. If no adverse comments are received during the 45-day comment period, and no hearing is requested, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to complete the rulemaking and adopt the proposed regulations at 16 CCR Section 1399.152.2 as amended.
To just also including the interim.
Yes, I was gonna say that.
Authorize the interim, okay, authorize the interim executive or an alternative to take all steps necessary to complete the rulemaking and adopt the proposed regulation at 16 CCR Section 1399.152.2 as amended.
Do we have a second? Thank you. I'd like to ask the moderator to open public comment on WebEx at this time. There are no members of the public present.
We are open for public comment on agenda item 10 and the motion. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users, dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to ask Ms. Burns to conduct the roll call vote at this time.
Ms. Dominguez?
Aye.
Dr. White? Aye. Mr. Borges?
Aye.
Dr. Chambers? Aye. Ms. Chang?
Aye.
Mr. Danduran?
Aye.
Dr. Sanders?
Aye.
Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item 11, discussion and possible action to review and revise the board's administrative procedure manual. I might like to ask Ms. Burns to present information on the manual.
Thank you. So boards and bureaus at the Department of Consumer Affairs adopt the Administrative Procedure Manual to provide guidance to board members regarding the roles and responsibilities of their position, rules of conduct, and the general processes and procedures to be followed in completing board business. The Administrative Procedure Manual also provides transparency to the public on the board's governance and administrative structure and the way the board operates. We did last review the 2016 version and finalized that at the February 2023 board meeting. Since we are about to go through sunset, and it's always good to take a look every couple of years, I figured we should go ahead and just take a quick review. If there's anything, typos, changes, we'd like to reconsider the number of holds that it requires, or number of votes to hold for board discussion, anything like that. It's open and ready for your consideration.
I think the first thing that I found is that our mission, vision, and values do not match our strategic plan.
Right. Right on it.
The other area.
I don't have any substantive changes or discussion. I just have very minor edits throughout in a few pages. Bring them now. Okay.
Yes.
So starting on page 3 under the overview, paragraph 1. 2/3 of the way down. A speech language pathologist also provides oral rehabilitation for individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing and provides, I think it should be provides therapy, but with an S, in the augmentative and alternative communication domain for individuals with diagnoses such as autism, spectrum disorder, and progressive neurological disorders. An audiologist provides, I think an S should be there, services for individuals with hearing loss and balanced vestibular disorders across the lifespan. Same page, 3rd paragraph, line 2. I wasn't quite sure, it's a new entity, the Speech Language Pathology and Audiology and Hearing Aid Dispensers Board, and then parentheses says board. I'm not.
Oh, so that we can use just board throughout.
Okay.
We don't have to use
Okay.
the long name.
Is there supposed to be an acronym there? Okay. Page 7, right above, at the very bottom, where you have the bolded notice of meetings, just above that, items not included on the agenda may not be discussed. I don't know if that's missing a period. Page 14, just above the bolded committee appointments section. Same thing, the last bullet above that doesn't have a period at the end of the sentence. So legislative ad hoc committee.
Also, we probably want to update it to be legislative and regulatory. I think that was part of strat plan, right? To expand the scope of it. I can't remember. I'll double check that.
Okay. And then on the next page, 15, under board staff, second sentence, speech language pathologist, and then audiologist should be plural. And the last one I have is on page 21. Under Attorney General role, the very bottom, third line from the bottom, I think the DAG works should be plural. And then it's like it's cut off, like we don't have the rest of the.
Oh.
I think we're probably missing a couple of sections if I look back at the index.
Yeah. Pick your own ending.
Cliffhanger.
Pick your own ending. Ending 1 or ending 2?
I wonder if the printer like jammed or
I wondered, we just didn't catch it before we put a whole bunch of.
Let's say SAG, yeah, we're missing pages. Yeah.
So you have it complete online, it looks like, Sheree?
It is online and complete.
Yeah, I did see it online.
I was gonna say, it's pretty big on there. Let's see.
And it is the last chapter. We're under chapter 7. It's just about half of that chapter, it looks like. And I'm sorry I didn't catch it before yesterday.
No, I apologize. None of us caught that.
yeah, 6 pages is missing.
I looked at it online. I didn't even know that.
I have a hard time editing, but looking on a screen, I can see it a lot better when I print it.
So we do have 27 pages. So yes, we are missing 22 through the end. Well, my guess is we need to look at that legislative and regulatory committee to align to the strategic plan. We'll bring that back and the rest of the pages. Because I do love catching all the typos. My eyes go right through them. The next sections are filing formal charges, actions proceeding in administrative hearing, stipulations, determining settlement terms, Office of Administrative Hearings, and board review of stipulations, proposed decisions, and default decisions. The biggest part in this section, funny enough, which is what I always want us to look at, is the ballot procedure, which is in those pages.
Sharice, would it be feasible to screen share it so we could review it? I mean, do we have the time
I think we can. Let me,
make it really big.
moderator, could you make me the, give me the ball, I think it's called a globe, so that I can go to the combined meeting material?
You have the power. We have the combined meeting materials uploaded.
Apologize for the fast clicking. These materials are online if you are watching via WebEx. Oh, that is actually a great option.
That'd be great, but in the meantime.
Yeah, and making edits would be
That will be on that tiny screen from far away.
It's so hard, huh?
Yeah. Why don't we do that? So we'll pause this discussion. We'll print the rest of the pages. We'll come back to this agenda item later.
Okay.
Yeah. At first I was worried because I forget, you guys are right across the way. You can get a printer. I don't have a printer here.
So that's good
I
then.
need a portable printer.
Even better.
Okay. Even better. So we will pause the discussion on agenda item 11 and get the printout, and we'll return to agenda item 11 after lunch.
Oh. So an hour, okay. All right, on that note, we'll go ahead and pause, and we'll proceed with agenda item 12, the overview of the process and schedule for the board's 2025 Sunset Review Report and the 2026 Joint Sunset Review Oversight Hearings. So I'd like to ask Ms. Burns to present information on the Sunset Review Report and the process.
Okay, so each year, the Assembly Business and Professions Committee and the Senate Business Professions and Economic Development Committee hold joint Sunset Review Oversight Hearings to review boards and bureaus under the Department of Consumer Affairs. The Sunset Review process provides an opportunity for DCA, the legislature, the boards and bureaus themselves, and stakeholders to discuss the performance of the boards and bureaus, make recommendations for improvement, and extend the sunset date of a board or bureau. Alternatively, if you're not doing well, you can also be sunsetted shorter. You can also be downgraded to other levels. You could lose your more independent status as a board and become a committee. There are many different ways if your board is not doing well for the legislature to use their authority to ensure that you actually take actions to improve. Thankfully, this board does not have that problem in the recent past. We have been chugging along nicely. So our next sunset date, of course, is coming up. So the sunset for the board is decided by the legislature. It's typically 4 years. It can be longer. It can be shorter. Ours is at 4 years. That means that our actual sunset date is January 1, 2027. In order for that date, that's when the legislation becomes effective. That means our sunset hearings will be in spring of 2026. So as you might remember, last time we made this fun 209-page beautiful report. We get all of the questions, but that means that next year in 2025, we will get technically the questions. Now, I do have a copy of last year's questions that boards got. They do sometimes change. A good chunk of the report is the same year to year because it's the standard questions, but they do get other questions in the back. So starting in 2025, we will start doing all of the report writing, pulling all of the data for the last 4 years, cleaning all of the data, divvying it up in ways that we don't normally maybe chop up the data for your consumption. So oftentimes it's work that we've not touched at all because it just needs to be formatted in a different way. There's been an effort by DCA along with the committees to try to streamline all of the data we run to be similar so that as you run it for your sunset report as well. That process is still ongoing and still in the works. So there is a lot that we'll be doing next year. Staff, and as I like to say, we're the small but mighty board. But that also means that when we go into sunset and when we start writing this report, everybody works on sunset, whether it's reviewing data, cleaning data, sitting with the sunset committee to write the first draft of the report that you as a board will review. We all work on that. So part of the timeline is that staff will take this last year's report and get a head start on most of the questions, and also analyze what were the new ones, and are they applicable to us, or do we need to look at ways to get in different information or different data in order to answer the questions? Sometimes that is also an issue. But next year, the staff will begin doing that. By summer, we will get, and I know I wish it was sooner, but it's usually by summer, they will give us the questions, the final version of their questions. So we may have to make some additional changes. And we'll get those from the legislature. In the fall, the Sunset Review Ad Hoc Committee and board leadership will develop the report, and for the board's consideration, we'll go through each and every subsection, review, analyze, edit, and then the board will review and hopefully approve the Sunset Report in November. It has to be delivered to the committees in the winter, usually December, but sometimes the deadline's in January. In the spring, that's when the sunset oversight hearings will occur. What I will tell you is the committee and the staff take this fun 209-page report, review it, and then they end up having supplemental questions, which they will then say, okay, now that you've answered these, however many, 78, 70 questions, we have these additional questions. So go ahead and fill out this additional form. And often you'll see it as part of the committee material. And we do our very best to address all those questions before getting to the hearing if the questions are provided ahead of time. In the spring, that also includes meetings. Oftentimes the executive officer and the assistant executive officer have multiple meetings with the committee staff to answer all of their questions. It's inevitable. There's always something they'd like to know. In the last sunset, we had brand new committee staff. So that was an interesting and engaging conversation. This person was new. They were actually very engaged and wanted to learn, which is fantastic. That's not always what you get. So it was a great opportunity for the board to educate them and also get kind of into the weeds on some of our issues that we addressed last time. And then in the spring, we will end up having the hearing. So the executive officer, board chair, and vice chair all speak on the board's behalf. We set up a time. We'll be at a hearing. They used to be online. It'll be in person. So we'll have to come up in person at the Capitol, provide the testimony at the hearing, and then answer any questions from the committees that's there live, which depending can be either wonderful commentary and kudos, or can also be a grilling. We do our best to always prepare, of course, and over-prepare is the mantra, right? So then in the summer, the actual piece of legislation that reauthorizes us, it gives us the next sunset date 4 years out. That bill finally takes form in the summer. So that language will be there in the fall. Those bills are approved by the legislature and then sent to the governor. And then, of course, in January 1 of the next year, 2027, that's when we get our new effective date. The biggest thing to think about in this is that it's a lot of work. We're going to be doing a whole lot of writing, editing, narration, and data on the staff level. On top of that, every time you go up for sunset, it is a fabulous opportunity to take a look at what's going on in your practice act, with the caveat that you don't want to have a sunset problem. So you can bring up issues that are important and that you would like to proceed with that you think would not be so controversial as to cause a problem. In the last time we did the audiology reciprocity, if we remember that, right? So for the longest time, speech language pathology had the triple C's. And audiology just didn't have that for the American Academy of Audiology side, where their certificate. So this time around, I bring this up to get you all starting to think, what are the issues that we need to be talking about next year? Because in order to put it in our sunset report, the board needs to discuss it at one of our meetings next year, all of those issues, including looking at what kind of language we might want in the statute. So as an example, right now, our board does not have a retired license status. Audiologists, speech pathologists, hearing aid dispensers, when you decide to retire, the best you can do is let your license expire and go delinquent and then cancel within 3 to 5 years. It is not the preferred method. We can go before the legislature and request to have a retired status. and for them to set a fee for that, a one-time fee, also to set up rules. I will tell you, the more self-implementing your legislation can be, then our legislation and regulations analyst does not have to write as many regulations to implement them. I will tell you from prior experience, that can take a while. So it's not that uncommon for it to go from one sunset to get the authority to make the retired status. You get to the next sunset and your regs aren't even implemented yet, unfortunately. Just depends. So especially depending on how many regulations you have in the priority, right? One important thing about a retired status is obviously it does not exempt you from discipline, so you don't get to retire in lieu of discipline, but it has a way to off-ramp with dignity to the retired status. It also usually has an on-ramp provision for a certain number of times. Say you decide, I'm done, I want to retire, and then 2 years later, you're like, you know what, this retired thing, I just can't do any more golf. I got to go back to work. You can on-ramp back on, and there's a process for that without having to reapply from the get-go as if you were a brand new licensee. So that's a legislative idea that Sunset can usually implement. And so those kind of things, along with cleanup areas of our statute that are technically cleanup, those can be done. This is the kind of stuff that we'll kind of want you to be thinking of, to bring up those items for board discussion, to bring them to the board chair potentially for that. I mentioned retired because it is one of those interesting questions. When we look at our licensing data, there's a good number of expired/delinquent licenses, but we don't have a way to say, oh, you just forgot, or you're retired and you're not coming back, so let's exclude you from the numbers, right? Or in that way, we're tracking. We also then don't have the workforce data of this many people retire, oh, we're seeing an upswing, oh, we need to be cognizant of a decline in the license numbers and therefore revenue. So this is, it's kind of a multi-pronged benefit when you do a retired license. But that's kind of, I bring it up as it's part of Sunset potentially. We would have that conversation at a board meeting. You'd be looking at all these different proposals and then bring it to the Sunset back. It's kind of in the new section of new items and issues that we want to move. So the biggest thing was that we're here. It's back to sunset time. I was surprised as well that we were here. I thought we had just done it. It felt like we had just done it. So we want to start getting prepared. We want to start thinking of issues we might want to include. And then just be ready for needing to put a big chunk of time at some of these meetings towards those issues. And time to dedicate to review, because it's 209 pages, it's a lot of sections. As we run the data, different issues might arise, different narratives to bring into the conversation. And that's just kind of part of the process. But all of that to say, lots of stuff ahead. Obviously, we've had a nice, clean sunset last time and a lot of good things. We have a lot of great things to report to them. We'll also be able to report that we've resumed CE audits. A lot of great things in the last 4 years that we were able to tack away at. But a lot of workload coming, and start thinking about those kind of maybe back burner ideas, clean up things, and the rest that will need to get in there. Do you have any questions?
Yeah. On previous organizations that were at for the state, for the sunset review, we would tackle like more than 2 issues. Is that also similar with here?
I think we tackled like 4 or 5 items. There were just a couple bigger ones, which was the audiology and adding the aid renewal, which we're still working on regulatory. Again, adding those items in, those were kind of the bigger items that were hurdles, and then a lot of questions about why aren't you doing CE audits and lack of staffing. those kind of questions. Those were kind of the bigger ticket items. And then the staff member assigned to us was very new. So she was great and engaged, so we had lots of discussion, and then she really wanted to get in the weeds to say that. So, and things that you'll see is like trends, right? So prior to the pandemic happening, much of the questions were about criminal convictions and AB 2138 and how many denials do you do, and that's still some of the data they want to know about, but that was a big chunk of the focus. Was what are you guys doing and how are you implementing this bill and so on and so forth. Then the pandemic happened, and then it was like, oh, we have all these other questions, and then what has changed since then? And I'm trying to remember, but there was some questions about like, what was it, online advertising and different other questions that they were starting to get to, but the pandemic kind of overshadowed that change in direction. And so we'll see a lot of changes in the coming years, but some of it's the standard, it's the same report you've seen multiple times. But bringing up new issues, bringing up areas of concern. I think last time we talked about the shortages in certain areas, but there wasn't a ton we could do to get more SLP and SLPA programs going. One of the things we'll get to report is that there are more SLPA programs now for baccalaureate holders. Many of the CSUs have tried to address that issue. So that's interesting change. But yeah, there can be multiple issues. The biggest thing is we want to start talking about them and get them slated on the agendas for next year so that we can flesh them out and get them in that report for the last board meeting of the year to get it done and approved and set.
So previously, when the board was taking up the idea of an audiology assistant, and we kind of hit the pause button on that, was that the discussion? Was that it was something? No, it's completely different.
So I will, even though that's not on the agenda, but the question to create a new license type is a Sunrise application.
Okay.
So it's got to be a separate thing that you go to them for. So
I got them confused.
Yeah, no worries. So yeah, they do have a separate Sunrise application. They do have prior ones on there that talk about it, and you need to justify that.
Okay.
What's the need? Why should we regulate it? What's the gap we're trying to fill? All the rest of it. And then can the board handle it?
Okay. And then just to clarify on your timeline, so on the page 1, yep, on the third bullet, should that be winter of 2025 and then spring of 26?
Yes.
Summer 26? Okay.
Yes, thank you. Well, winter technically is December 21st through, I think it's like February, so it's kind of wonky, but yes.
Yeah, it's winter. Yeah, I think that's fine.
But I definitely wanted us to start thinking about it. Oftentimes you don't, I mean, it takes a lot of pre-work and pre-prep for Maria and myself and everyone else to get all the information all ready for us to consider and look at the language and think about all the alternatives. And so if we're wanting to think of anything like that, like a retired status or something like that, we kind of need to get it started next year pretty early so that by the time we're hitting the mid-year, we have an actual central item that we can look at, review the text, and in the fall approve. So it just comes fast. It feels like just yesterday we did it, and now here we are again. So definitely wanted us to get on board, looking at it, and go from there.
Do we require additional board members on the ad hoc committee for that, or are we pretty well set?
No. So if you have more than 2 members, you have to be a standing committee. You always could have that. I would suggest, though, the benefit of being more mobile and flexible with the sunset is that we can convene a meeting anytime because there's only 2 of you. Oftentimes, that becomes really important once we turn in the report, because suddenly they're going to have other questions that maybe Maria and I can't answer. We need more of your input. We now need a meeting to discuss the new question that was an outgrowth of our report, so now they want additional stuff. And then now we need you guys to go out into the community and get the data for us and the new information. It becomes an interesting back and forth. And so that ability to meet as two-member ad hoc committees is really important for the flexibility. Mind you, all of it comes to the board consideration at the end, and you'll be reviewing other things through the spring/summer of next year anyway. Any other questions?
Hearing none, I'd like to ask the moderator to open for public comment. There are no members of the public present at this time.
We are open for public comment on agenda item 12. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, thank you. We'll move on to agenda item 13, legislative report, update, review, and possible action on proposed legislation. I'd like to ask Ms. Lorenzo to provide the legislative report.
Thank you, Ms. Dominguez. The first item in the report is the legislative calendar and deadlines. The legislature adjourned sine die at midnight on November 30th and convened for an organizational session on December 2nd. Statutes that were signed this year will be effective January 1st, 2025, unless stated otherwise. The next item in the report is board-sponsored legislation, SB 1526. This bill was chaptered by the Secretary of State on September 22nd. This bill will require graduation from a speech-language pathology associate degree program or equivalent course of study approved by the board, and referring to hearing aid dispenser license instead of a hearing aid dispensers, '(S), license, as it relates to hearing aid dispensers and dispensing audiologists. This bill would also make some numerous technical and clarifying provisions related to programs within DCA. Then next on the report, item C is bills with active position. Just wanted to remind the public that we did have a bill with an active position that died earlier in the year, which is AB 381. So that's there for your information. The board took a neutral if amended position. And then item D is bills with recommended watch list. Since our last board meeting, 2 bills were signed by the governor, and that's AB 199.1 regarding licensees and restaurant records, which is on page 4 of 7. This bill was chaptered on September 22nd and requires healing art boards to require licensees or registrants who electronically renew their license or registration to provide to the board's licensees or registrants individual national provider identifier if they have one. This bill states that that a violation to this bill requirement is not a crime. We also have SB 1451 regarding professions and vocations, which is on page 7 of 7. This bill was chaptered on September 22nd. This bill adds the initials CO to a list of prohibited terms under the Medical Practice Act and prohibits a person from using the word doctor or physician, the letters or prefix DR, and the initials MD or DO, or any other terms or letters indicating or implying that the person is a physician and surgeon, physician, surgeon, or a practitioner in the healthcare setting. We did have our legal counsel looked at it to see how it, if our regulations are in compliance, and they are. The board already prohibits licensees from using the initial letters, prefix, DR, without disclosing the discipline in which the degree was earned when advertising. And like I mentioned, what's being added is the DO. That would be prohibited, which are licensees licensed by the Osteopathic Medical Board of California. And then we did include an example of the correct and incorrect way to advertise a doctoral degree. Then there's also two bills that were vetoed by the governor, AB 1949 regarding California Consumer Privacy Act of 2020 and collection of personal information of consumer under the age of 18. That can be found on page 3 of 7. And then on page 4, you'll see the veto message that the governor provided. And then the other bill that was vetoed was AB 2339 regarding Medi-Cal and telehealth, which can be found on page 5 of 7, as well as the veto message that the governor provided. Attached are copies of all the bills the governor signed this year. And then, Ken, you got any questions? That concludes my report.
If I could open up for board discussion. Okay, thank you. Hearing none, I'd like to ask the moderator to open public comment on WebEx. There are no members of the public present with us at this time.
We are open for public comment via WebEx. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users, dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, please. Thank you.
I have a, and it was just a little bit slow.
Okay, we'll circle back then. Yes.
Is that okay? Okay. So going back to SP 1451, the correct way and the incorrect way, and then I was looking at one of our slide 9 for the board members. So is this the correct way? Because then the incorrect way, like Dr. John Doe, Audiology, is this okay? The
the strategic plan?
Yeah, like the Dr. Sanders, audiologist. Is that?
So I would clarify, the legislation specifically says any person who uses any sign, business card, letterhead, or advertisement.
Okay.
So it's a restriction in certain things, so mostly for advertising purposes.
Okay, got it.
So I don't think we've been told anyone needs to change how we do the strat plan or even our meeting minutes, right? We
Right.
Dr. Sanders, because it's not a signed business card, letterhead, or advertising.
Okay.
Do I need to circle back for public comment again, or can we proceed?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, public comment again?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to ask the moderator to reopen WebEx for public comment before we proceed with the next agenda item.
We have reopened for public comment on agenda item 13. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users, dial *3 to raise your hand. We will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request, would you like to continue with the agenda?
Okay, thank you. We'll move forward to the next agenda item, 14, the discussion and possible action to adopt a legislative proposal for an omnibus bill to amend BPC sections 25 2531.3, 2532.2, 2532.3, 2532.4, 2532.6, 2532.7, 2536, and 2538.53. Education Code Section 44831 and Welfare and Institutions Code 14132.55. I'd like to ask Ms. Lorenzo to present the legislative proposal for an omnibus bill.
Thank you, Ms. Dominguez. So each year, the Senate Committee on Business and Professions and Economic Development introduces a technical, non-substantive committee bill, which revises provisions of the Business and Professions Code. So the board has an opportunity to make any non-substantive changes to our Practice Act. They should be non-controversial, non-substantive, and just intended to clarify, update, or strengthen existing law. Board staff does have proposed changes that the board can consider, which is found in the attachment. Essentially, we're just, there's some areas that had gender pronouns that we're just revising it to use non-gender pronouns. There's also our old board name, replacing old board names with the new board names in a couple of sections, as well as the Education Code and Welfare and Institutions Code. And then replace, correct the statutory citation in the hearing aid dispensing regarding renewals of a temporary license. It should be trainee license. A temporary license, HAD who are licensed out of state and want to be licensed here cannot renew their license. So just correcting that language. And yeah, so that concludes my report, and I could take any questions.
Open it up for board discussion. Okay, hearing none, I'd like to ask the moderator to open for public comment on WebEx. There are no members of the public present with us at this time.
We are open for public comment on agenda item 14. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users, dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, please. So at this time, I'd like to ask for a motion.
Sorry, I did find one
go ahead.
gendered pronoun under the Welfare Institute.
Which section?
It's
What page?
Page 66. Section 141.2.55, the very end, underneath the new language for the, yes, if he or she.
Good catch.
It's not in our Practice Act, but we can.
Yeah, so I've seen in omnibus bills that they do incorporate other sections if they're related to the Business Practice Act. So I remember I was looking at our Practice Act and the fund and board names was weird, was the old one. So I went and looked at other places. So yeah, we could present that and I'm sure they'll.
They've instructed us to do it. I'm sure they'll take it as recommended. Can't hurt them.
Okay, hearing no further discussion, I'd like to ask for a motion on this agenda item, and suggested motion language is on page 2 of 2.
Would we need to change the motion language to incorporate asking them to change that?
At the end, you could just say as amended.
Where it says legislative proposal as noted, you would say as amended.
As amended.
I can make the motion.
Sure. Okay.
I move to adopt the legislative proposal as amended, direct staff to take all necessary steps to submit the proposal and authorize the an interim executive officer or their designee to take all steps necessary to complete the process for the legislative.
Do we have a second? Thank you. I'd like to ask the moderator to reopen public comment on WebEx on this agenda item. There are no members of the public present with us at this time.
We are reopened on agenda item 14 for the motion. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. As a reminder to our mobile device users, you may need to hit the ellipses button, that's the ... in order to find your hand. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request, do you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes, please. Thank you. I'd like to ask Ms. Burns at this time to conduct the roll call vote.
Ms. Dominguez.
Aye.
Dr. White. Aye. Mr. Borges.
Aye.
Dr. Chambers.
Aye.
Ms. Chang.
Aye.
Mr. Danduran.
Aye.
Dr. Sanders.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, we'll move on to agenda item 15, legislative items for future meeting. I'd like to ask if there are any legislative items that the board members would like to present for future meetings.
Board staff doesn't have any.
No further board discussion? I'd like to ask the moderator to open for public comment at this time on WebEx. There are no members of the public present with us at this time.
We are open on agenda item 15, legislative items for future meeting. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, thank you. So right now we'll go ahead and we're going to break for lunch at this time at 11:27, and we'll reconvene at 12:30. So we'll reconvene at 12:30 p.m. and we'll reopen the public meeting at that time. Thank you. Okay, resuming our speech language pathology and audiology and hearing aid dispensers board meeting. It is 12:34 p.m. on Friday, December 6th. We are going to circle back and we're going to address agenda item 11, discussion and possible action to review and revise the board's administrative procedure manual. We ended our discussion at page 21. We do now have the rest of the packet from page 22 through 27. And so we will now ask Sharice to continue to present information to the board regarding the manual.
All right. So the rest of it goes into the process for discipline, so filing formal charges, actions proceeding in administrative hearings, how the board does stipulations, and how the board determines settlement terms, talks about the Office of Administrative Hearings, and then board review of stipulations, proposed decisions, and default decisions. So this is always the big part when we're talking about how the board reviews, the ballot procedure and definitions, and when to hold. Would you like me to go over it, or does anybody have any questions, edits?
Well, if I could jump ahead to page 26 for the ballot vote definition. Lately, we've had a fourth ballot choice where it had to be redone because something was wrong in the terminology or whatnot, and We've also had issue with it kind of being a little confusing. Should we maybe not add that fourth ballot vote definition in here? So it has a little more understanding of what that means. We've had two in the last 6 months where it was sent back with a fourth option.
Something like accept with edits or accept with
Yeah,
recommended changes or.
Something like that.
So there's like, it's almost like an addendum.
Part of your memo.
I think we should add it.
Memo that's sent to them.
So. Ballot that I just sent.
Basically had to revote.
Is it typically one set of wording when you're giving them the fourth option to adopt or accept with recommended edits or?
Right.
We would want to add that in here as the
Mhm.
fourth option, so it's clear.
Comment, can I, so while he's searching my email?
Oh, yeah.
In terms of ballot procedures, I was told in the beginning it had to be wet signatures. Is there any way we could do digital signatures?
I've been doing digital.
Really?
When you,
In the very beginning, it had
probably when you first started, we weren't doing any of the e-signatures. 'Cause she came, I was gonna say, I think, Amy, you came along pandemic during time.
Yeah.
So,
Just after it started.
and that had just changed a
I
lot.
was, can we put that in here?
Yeah.
Digital signatures. I was like, searching, I'm like, it doesn't say it has to be wet signatures.
Everyone but there.
So there was one time I was
Where would
at,
that be at?
I was in,
Karen, what page is that on? Sorry.
page 25 and 26.
Somewhere like in the completed ballot section, we'll add it.
Yeah, ballot signatures. There's nothing that says signatures here either.
Right.
No,
So,
and that might be
Not in there at
why.
all.
and,
First, critical that the board members return their votes timely, maybe something in there.
Or in the very beginning where it said this done by electronic mail, and put just a statement in there saying it can be done either as a digital signature or wet signature, if that's the kind of thing.
well, wet signature, I was like, I physically print it out.
Right.
Well, I do.
Sign it,
I
and
print
then-
it out, yeah.
And then I physically scan it and save it and send it
That's what I
over
do.
to you.
That's what I do.
Really?
Yeah, that's what I do.
I do.
I do Adobe.
I just sit it on my desk.
Yeah, I was
Print it.
told that, only wet signatures, no digital.
I could see that being the rule at one point, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
It wasn't that long ago that anything we submitted to the Department of Justice was also the physical hard copy, and now it's uploaded into a.
Okay, so we're allowed.
If we add that to 25, that the ballot is done by mail, digital signatures are acceptable, ballot packet materials are confidential and include the following.
Okay, and then, so, once a decision is filed, the ballot packet materials must be confidentially destroyed, so we just like delete it in our email.
Yes, you should be deleting it and then clearing your delete box.
Okay.
When it's paper, if it's closed session materials, those kind of things, give them back to me, or you need to secure shred it, so it needs to be cross shredded, where you watch it being shredded. That's often easy enough just to give it back to us. But for the electronic ones, yes, delete and then empty your folder. And since you won't need to print it, you won't have to shred it.
On that same page on 25, the section right above ballot procedure, that paragraph right above ballot procedure, the first sentence, I think we're missing a period after reject. And I had a question on page 24, second paragraph. The last sentence or two sentences there, I guess I'm just not quite sure that last sentence, board review of stipulations, proposed decisions, and default decisions. what is that? It seems like an incomplete sentence, so I don't know if it's supposed to be like tied to the prior sentence. The proposed decision is submitted to the board for consideration, period. And then it just has those.
Oh, it looks like a header. Okay.
Okay, I was gonna say, it's kind of weird because it's all capitalized and.
Yeah, and then it's right down.
Oh, it should be the next
after the
header.
paragraph. Yeah.
So that's a part of the next paragraph, that's the header for the next paragraph?
I think so.
You already have it right below that following paragraph. You have that exact same header.
I think, is that paragraph, I think that paragraph is part of that. Should be part of it, right? Because board members reviews and vote on each case.
Yeah.
The header should be before that.
It's actually the same paragraph.
Just the same paragraph, it's just a duplicate, you just cross it off.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's the header and that first
That
paragraph.
whole-
Oh, yeah. The whole paragraph.
Oh, yeah, it's a duplicate.
Right.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So from that one odd sentence, that all the way down to that,
Yeah.
to the header.
Todd, were you talking about those? I found one of our old ones. I vote to adopt the order. I vote to adopt the order with reduction of penalty. I vote to adopt the order after making technical or other minor changes. I vote to reject the order. I vote to hold the matter for consideration, or I recuse myself. This one has 6 different options.
Yeah. I think it would be preferable if there are a limited number of options.
Giving us something else.
I think they should be included, if they're, but.
Lawyer. And why, that's, we haven't seen that until this year. I don't remember ever seeing that.
It's helpful, though.
This is one from.
She started cropping up. So.
And normally are mostly going to see them with edits.
Yeah.
But if we're gonna, if it came up this time, it's gonna possibly come up again, so we should just include all of the potential definitions.
Well, the one thing I'm thinking is that if you want to change a penalty or term, wouldn't you hold it for discussion?
Mm-hmm.
So really, it should be adopt/accept, adopt/accept with edits, because there might just be technical edits that are needed. Reject or hold for discussion, because if you want to change increased penalty, reduced penalty, so on and so forth, that's part of the hold for discussion. So I think if we add the adopt/accept, and I'll work with you, Ping, to put in the language with.
The definition is.
Yeah. I'm going to put edit/amendments, and then we can kind of converge on one version and then bring it back in February for you guys to see a final version of this. You'll see the final version of the strat plan. Updated one.
Therefore, our ballots will be limited just to those 4 bullet points, correct?
Yeah. Because presumably, unless you find another reason, it should fit in the 4 categories. You're either adopting it with edits,
Right.
we're rejecting it, or it just needs to be held for discussion because you guys need to discuss terms and conditions.
You would be better, the less confusing.
Well, and then this will also help to clarify, hey, you think these are our 4 categories, and make sure that whatever we're writing is in them. Well, that's fine. I can't think of anything else.
Under the proposed decision on page 25, it talks about those to make technical or other minor changes. We have that language already there.
Mm-hmm. You wanted to use that one?
Mm-hmm.
Like it.
Oh, I see, taking that language and moving it over.
I remember seeing that on one.
Here we go.
Also on page 26, the second paragraph, it says kind of the middle, there's only 4 sentences, so the third sentence, it says it may be your vote that is deciding vote. I don't know if it needs to say the deciding vote.
Right.
The outcome of a case.
26.
Right here.
Page 26. And
Paragraph, yeah.
Ah.
Say that it's deciding the outcome of the case and leave that whole bit up there.
Is there a preference?
I'm always a fan of not repeating words in the same sentence, but.
Okay, and maybe your So that is the deciding vote.
You could also just say,
Maybe your vote, maybe that your vote is, you know.
I think
Shorter
it's
or
fine,
okay,
personally.
as long as we put the. Okay.
What about returning their votes by the deadline, by the requested deadline? Because we do get the reminders.
Is it not on?
It says, therefore, it's critical that board members return their votes timely. I propose putting it by the requested
Yeah.
deadline.
By the indicated date.
Whatever, I think she could, whatever she said in that email.
This last time it was a little bit later than normal.
The requested date, right? We'll put instead of deadline. Requested due date. Did you already get that period right here? That's
Yep.
the one you got, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Any other further board discussion?
It's interesting, and maybe it's because I'm new and I'm new to this position. In the proposed decision, it does have reduced,
It does.
and I'm a little uncertain as to why that's not hold for discussion. Like, I get that that's an option, but in translation to how you would vote to reduce it, you would hold it for discussion.
Well, but that's a proposed decision by the
ALJ.
Okay, the ALJ has these options to come up with. That's not necessarily related to how we're gonna vote on what they decide.
Oh, but those are your options, is to adopt it, reduce it, reject it, or make technical.
We don't we don't vote to reduce the sentence.
No.
Or anything. We don't. That's
Not
the
normal.
ALJ. That's the ALJ saying,
It's kind
the
of a
ALJ is
weird-
either gonna adopt it, they're gonna reduce it, reject it, or make changes. Then we're gonna vote to accept, reject, hold that decision by the ALJ. So they're actually two distinct
Yeah.
things.
I just think it's weird that we give those four options when
Yes.
we're clear on the page before it that in our stipulations, your options are adopt, reject, or hold for discussion. What does it mean? And then we have adopt, reduce, reject, make technical. Now, those are your options when you're in the room and discussing. You're
Right,
for
but
discussion.
we don't have the option to reduce it.
Yeah, no.
When we're discussing it, that's the ALJ that has the option.
I think to make technical and minor,
Proposed decision, that's one of the five options.
I think it's just, minor changes, like a period here and there, not, it doesn't affect the factual or legal base of the decision.
Reese, are you
Making them
saying,
technical.
the reduction is kind of, in relation to, for example, if there's a, proposed penalty of $2,000, we can reduce it down to something
Yeah,
else
but-
in the lower end of the range that's allowed.
But the way the board does it is you hold it for discussion
Yeah.
and you discuss it.
Right.
Then you change the penalty, the conditions and terms. And that's why this is weird. Those are your options, but they're all under the hold for discussion in order to do them.
We're on page 25, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about the make
Well, and-
technical
Just
or
the
other.
whole, how you review them, and then, and maybe it's just a technicality, but in each of them, your options are adopt, reject, or hold.
In the first paragraph on page 24, it also has the adopt, reject, modify the decision.
No.
I only see adopt, reject, hold for discussion.
Hold for discussion.
Right, but we don't have it, according to that, in that first paragraph, we don't have the option to reduce.
Yeah,
Oh, but you do, though, when you discuss it at the board
Right,
meeting.
but that's what I'm saying, so this is at the
Yeah.
beginning, and then the reduction comes later.
you know, these proposed decision from ALJ following a formal hearing, this section we usually do together, right?
If you held it for a discussion.
Yeah, this is just saying what the ALJ is gonna
Yeah.
come up with. And then ours is, once we do the vote, if we hold,
Yeah,
then we go back and
yeah. So
possibly do these.
what's the,
So should the stipulations come after the vote definitions? Would that make more sense then in the quote-unquote timeline of how things go?
maybe.
Because isn't the timeline the ALJ decides, we vote, and then we have the stipulations that we can, if we opt to hold? Because and I always say that because you keep coming back to, well, these are all a part if you hold on the vote. Okay, well then this should, chronologically come after that in.
Maybe that's where the part I'm having a hard time with is because, yeah, every one of them, you don't get a stipulation or a proposed decision until the ALJ has done something or until the executive officer negotiates. Then you vote, and then your vote is either to adopt, reject, or hold for discussion and either reduce or make technical or you know what I mean? It's that way.
Well, is the make technical, isn't that going to be a fourth option?
Yes, and I think it should be.
Should that?
There's a lot of, sorry, a lot of times it's typos or wrong code reference
Right.
or something that.
The date was wrong.
So then, the paragraph on 25, we should probably add that to ballot vote definitions on 26.
Yes, we are. Yeah, we are.
Yeah, and I'm kind of thinking maybe they should mirror, you don't have to move the vote definitions up, but maybe they should at least be presented in the same manner. That if you want to do these things, you hold for discussion and you can do these things during discussion.
I think definitely the board, because it says the board members review and vote on each case, right?
Yeah.
And then the next thing is talking about what the ALJ is going to do. And then it comes back to us again with the ballot procedure. So I feel like the ALJ portion is kind of out of sequence. Or am I wrong?
I think we could talk about the procedure, the definition, and then what you're doing with them. So then move stipulated and proposed decisions, and then finish with disqualification. Would that make enough sense then?
Yeah.
So you're going to review them, and the way you're going to do that is through a ballot procedure. Here's the definitions, and then when you're reviewing them, this is what you're looking for.
I mean, honestly, until we see it changed around.
Yeah, I know. It's hard to conceptualize.
Conceptualize all these moving parts, as opposed to if we do the change and then we look at it and go, I think I like it better.
I think that'll be cleaner.
But I think that makes more sense, just from the progression of how things work.
Would it be helpful, so under the negotiated, it says adopt, reject, discussion, would it be, kind of similarly, so put adopt with the minor changes, and then, reject, and then hold for discussion, kind of like keeping it in those same three kind of bullet points for each of the.
That's what I'm thinking,
Right.
what each looks like for each of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then does that change the first paragraph right under the board review of stipulations, proposed decisions, and default decisions when you're talking about in all cases? The board member has the option to adopt, reject, or hold for discussion, and then there's another parenthesis, adopt, reject, or modify the decision. So maybe all that verbiage needs to be tied in together.
I think we should tie it all together. And we'll go, hopefully when I reorder these, it'll be super clear. One can hope. And it seems like disqualification should be last because it's been very limited exceptions that you're going to disqualify yourself to vote. I think that's better. That's gonna flow a lot better. So, you learned about this, here's what the OAH does. Once you get it back, here's what this goes in this order. Sometimes you disqualify yourself, very rarely. Okay. Any other additional changes, amendments? These sections that aren't clear?
We need to go back as brought forward previously about the mission and value.
Either we go.
Are there any changes you want to the roles, rules of conduct? More updated DCA travel guide is in there just for your edification, and the Bagley Keen Open Meeting Act, if you ever have questions. We usually reply on new things, but we give you the pamphlet just in case. DOJ.
If you're curious about the travel guide, there has been a recent change to the meal rate charge. So that was a bit major change that was recently done.
Did they reduce it?
No,
They've changed how it works in general. So the hotel is now based on the GSA rate. So the federal GSA rate. Not great. Well, it's better than it's better than what the state rate was. Okay. The state rate was less, which was even hard to get in Sacramento. Yeah. And now there's some rules about meals on the first or the last day when there's not a 24-hour period already, so that's a little wonky. It used to just be based on when you left, which was very simple. So now we're figuring it out. But sounds like it's the same as the federal government.
So we can just put it in there and then you'll adjust it accordingly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and everything we put in, DCA travel will tell us yes, no, or try again. So, I think I have any more of those. Yeah. Well,
All board members shall stay.
and the number of votes to hold, sorry, that's where
I don't recall doing defensive driver training.
Should only be if you
It's
need a
on
rental car.
this.
it's when you got first out on the board.
Oh, okay.
You did it. It was really fast.
Okay, all right.
It's just so
Strike
long
that.
ago.
Strike that.
Don't worry, I forgot, but yes, I did it so long ago. They don't make you keep redoing it, is why.
Offensive driver training.
Yeah, defense.
And then the hold for discussion, I just always ask the board. So right now, we have a hold for discussion. Right now, your vote count, one hold is a hold for discussion. And it hasn't been a problem.
No.
But at some boards, it becomes problematic if only one. But we don't have that. We don't have that many holds in the first place, so I'm not too concerned. If at any point we started seeing multiple held cases at every board meeting, then I would have a concern, but some boards have it at only two, so that way it's got to be a disagreement at least by two people, not just one.
Okay, Amy's trained my eye. So I don't know if we got this one. A period, first sentence, hold for discussion after the parentheses.
We are missing the period.
Got you.
You need the period hunters.
No, period hunters. So we can,
All right. So since we have a bunch of changes, I'll go ahead and update everything, and at February, I'll bring it back with the clean copy, matching the strat plan. and we can take a look.
Okay.
Good?
All right, so I can open up for public comment, correct? Okay. At this time, I'd like to ask the moderator to open WebEx for public comment on agenda item 11.
We are open for public comment on agenda item 11 and the discussion. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand. And as a reminder to our mobile device users, you may need to hit the ellipses button, that's the ... in order to find your hand. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes, please, thank you. Since we're not conducting a vote on this, it's going to be brought back into the next meeting. We'll go ahead and move to agenda item 16 regarding the election of board officers for 2025. At this time, I'd like to ask for nominations for board chair and for board vice chair for 2025. So I'll go ahead and start with nominations for board chair.
I nominate Gilda Dominguez for board chair.
Is this a situation where we second it, or is this just a free-for-all?
I'm pretty sure you can just nominate.
Okay.
And then we run those.
And then we vote? Okay.
Thank you. Correct me if I'm wrong.
On board discussion? All right, so proceed with the nominations for vice chair. So now I'd like,
I'll do a roll call vote after we get each of them.
so I'd like to ask for nominations for board vice chair at this time.
Todd. I nominate Todd.
Who says you were going to nominate? Did I hear something?
There we go.
Okay, so for board chair, I have been nominated. For board vice chair, we have Todd Borges being nominated and Dr. Amy White being nominated. I'd like to open it up for board discussion.
Just a quick question. How many times can you be board chair and vice chair?
I mean, I've never seen the limit.
There is no limit.
Yeah. It doesn't have a term limit in your administrative procedure manual. There's not one by law. So it's really up to you. I've been at a board where it was most of the 3 and change years I was there, and I've seen 3 different chairs in my 5 years here. So.
You remember.
Very interesting.
Previous.
Okay.
Why am I blanking on her name? But I'll come back. My brain will come back to it. Oh, the chair when I first got here. Dee Dee.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So it says, you can help us with any process questions. So what's next? How do we proceed next? Are we starting with the
Public comment and then take a vote?
You doing it as one slate, like?
No, because they have to decide between the 2 nominees as vice chair.
Let's take public comment for each.
Okay.
Okay. I'd like to ask the moderator to open up public comment regarding agenda item 16.
We are open for public comment on agenda item 16 and the nominations. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand. and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the nominations?
Yes, please. Thank you. At this time, calling for a roll call vote for the board chair.
Ms. Dominguez.
I accept. Aye.
Dr. White. Aye. Mr. Borges.
Aye.
Dr. Chambers.
Aye.
Ms. Chang.
Aye.
Mr. Dandarian.
Aye.
Dr. Sanders.
Aye.
Your chair will be Ms. Dominguez.
Thank you. Thank you all. My pleasure.
The next one, I can call each person, they can tell us their vote, or I have to have them vote all for Todd and then vote for Amy? That is that difference? Okay. You got it. For vice chair.
Have us say the name, or we
You
voting?
say the name. I'll say your name and you tell me your vote.
Okay.
I need to make a little major.
I know, it's like.
Okay. Ms. Dominguez.
I vote for Dr. Amy White.
Dr. White. I'll accept. Mr. Borges. Dr. Chambers. Dr. White. Ms. Chang.
White.
Mr. Dandarian.
Do I have to vote?
Yeah, you nominated.
Since I nominated Mr. Borges, I'm going to vote for him.
Dr. Sanders.
Dr. White.
Thank you. Okay. It's 6-1 for Dr. White to be the vice chair next. Todd.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
No offense, Todd.
I once had somebody try to nominate somebody who wasn't there.
Ooh.
And you're like, you can't nominate people to take on a role for a chair or vice chair that they're not here to defend themselves and say no.
Do I need to reopen for public comment, or we can move on to agenda item 17? Okay, thank you. Okay. So we'll move on to agenda item 17, potential dates for board meetings in 2025. So I'd like to ask Ms. Burns to discuss potential 2025 meeting dates.
Yes, if everyone can bring out their calendars.
February 21st.
Yeah, take it.
February 21st is solidified.
Apparently.
It's Friday, February 21st, in person, Sacramento. The next meeting, the options we have include Thursday and Friday, April 24th and 25th. The April 24th through 25th, Thursday, Friday.
What else?
Our other option is a remote meeting on May 15th or 16th.
I could do April.
Okay. The other option being June 5th or 6th. No? Okay. You're out in June?
I'm traveling in June.
Okay.
What were the May dates?
May 15th and 16th if it's remote, or April 24th and 25th.
For April 25th.
Everybody good for April 24th, 25th?
So is that going to be remote, or?
That one may end up being remote, but it might be in person. We'll have to see where we're at. The consideration being next August, the 3 August dates I have are remote only. So we have the option for July 24th or 25th.
Oh, okay. July.
What's that? No, I can't do that.
4th.
Oh, you can't do that either?
Well, I didn't even look at that one.
Oh. No, I can't do July 24th.
Not July, okay. No worries. Okay, how about, we could do remote in August. We could do the 7th and 8th. or the 14th and 15th, or the 21st or 22nd. So it's the Thursday, Fridays in August.
Not the 17th.
About the August,
Give the August dates again?
14th, 15th, or 21st and 22nd?
about the 21st and 22nd.
And that's remote?
Yeah,
Mhm.
that would be remote.
Is that okay? 21st, 22nd?
It's an option, but that's a bigger spread between an April meeting and a September meeting. And I'm always concerned about 100-day deadlines for enforcement if we don't have enough meetings in between.
Okay.
Are we okay with August 21st, 25th?
August 21st and 22nd?
I mean, sorry.
Seems to be
Remote?
good. Remote,
More meetings
okay.
you want.
That one for sure will be remote,
Okay.
August 21st and 22nd.
And that's going to be
Remote?
Absolutely remote. And then the last meeting of the year has to be in person. We're going to be doing the sunset
review.
and all of that. So, and whoever you hire in February, you will need to do their evaluation. And it is very much easier in person than it was remotely. Just in person. So, last meeting of the year got a little wonky with dates, so that's kind of the interesting part. November 13th and 14th, no. Okay. December 4th and 5th.
Like this weekend. Huh.
Yeah.
This weekend. Okay.
The only handy part about it being the first weekend in December is you aren't any closer to the holiday, but you are the weekend after Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving will again be on the end of November, the 27th. So I have December 4th or 5th, or December 11th and 12th.
No, that's even worse. Okay.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
For
4th and 5th.
December 4th and 5th? Okay. So to make it kind of even Stevens, we will be in person in February. We could do remote in both April and August, unless otherwise needed.
Did we decide on April? I cannot do April.
Oh,
I cannot do the
Oh, I thought we
20th.
did.
That's the, yeah, I'm
the
sorry.
24th, 25th?
I cannot do that.
Okay. May was out too.
What was the other dates in April?
May 15th and 16th doesn't work?
Somebody's gone the whole month of May, no?
No.
That's June. Oh, May 15th or 16th?
Double check that one.
I'd have to do a remote meeting for that one,
Okay.
but it's a date. And then June 5th and 6th was also an option, right?
I'd cross that out.
Oh, you crossed that out, that's right,
Yeah.
okay.
June
Oh, that's right, you can't do June.
Yeah, you can't do-
No, June 5th and 6th is not.
So it'll have
But
to
maybe
be
May 15th and 16th?
Remote?
Remote I can do.
Remote.
Yeah,
Can
remote.
you do remote April? No.
I can't do remote.
Yeah, you can't do remote.
Well,
could do remote
we had,
May.
we had the discussion, can I do, no, actually I
Oh,
cannot. I have a wedding, so.
I was gonna say, don't do that. You're at a
May
wedding.
15th, 16th remote?
15th and 16th then, May 15th and
Okay.
16th. We will be remote. So the two meetings in the middle will be remote. The first and the last meeting of the calendar year will be in person. So just for everybody on WebEx, first meeting of the year, February 21st. It's a Friday. It will be in person. We will try to also have WebEx available. The second meeting will be remote, WebEx only, in May 15th through 16th. The third meeting will also be remote with WebEx August 21st through 22nd. And the final meeting of the year in person will be December 4th through 5th. And since we will be in Sacramento in February, we will need to find a Southern California location for our December meeting.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Friends?
And, right, August was really hot when we went. So we will start those talks. I would like to try when we go down south to, since we're at least traveling, to try to go to schools that have students at them. So They want to see if UCLA or Northridge or somebody might want to host it.
Oh, okay.
I do like Mount SAC. It's a wonderful facility, but I also am curious about other programs that have speech and those and audiology programs, if we can go to those.
Okay, that's good too.
I presume everybody doesn't want to go to San Diego, because then you all have to travel, which would also be a cost to the state instead of some traveling and some not.
Mm-hmm.
Not far from me.
I like that.
It's commutable. Well, yeah, commutable.
But, is Northridge somewhat near you guys?
Northridge though is north.
Near John, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah, closer.
25 minutes away.
Closer.
Yeah.
We have like Chapman, that's Orange County.
You fly into Burbank.
Chapman, Fullerton.
Yeah.
There's Cal State LA.
Okay.
But UCLA is like really hard to
I
get.
know.
That's I was
at
going
Cal
to say,
State LA.
it's been difficult.
But there's Cal State.
The traffic is awful.
Okay. Well, we'll start seeing what we can do to reach out to locations. And
There's always Mount SAC.
I know, that was my thought. But I thought I would spread the wealth around a little bit.
Now we know how to go from the parking lot.
I know, now we know where we're going.
Well, we have also the SLIPA programs. We have like
Yeah.
Pasadena City College.
I was just going to say,
Cerritos.
we do have city colleges that have our SLIPA programs as well.
Yeah.
So we could
Pasadena.
try a SLIPA program. Would be
Pasadena,
nice.
Cerritos.
Yeah. Okay. Well, send me an email with your own nominations, our SoCal folks, to tell us
Okay.
nice locations to go to. Then we'll go to public comment.
Do we have to motion?
Do we have to vote on these? I don't think so.
Motion? Okay, no, okay. All right,
I put it on there 'cause I
All
don't
right.
remember.
okay.
We are open for public comment on agenda item 17, board meeting dates. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users, dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, thank you. Moving on to agenda item 18, future agenda items. I would like to ask the board members and staff if there are any future agenda items that you would like to propose for a future meeting.
I have one for concerning hearing aid dispenser training licensees. Something just recently came up that realized there was, I'm not really sure what we're doing there. Having a trainee work in, right now, they can basically work 4 days on their own and 1 day supervised with the 80-20 supervision. So the question came up is, can they do those unsupervised days in locations other than their quote-unquote home office? And if so, would they need a branch license for each of those places they work? So it's really two questions. Can they do that? And then I would think it would be clearly that they need a branch license to do it, but that's something that's not really quantified at all in the book. And we had that question posed to two people at the board, and we got two different answers. So I feel like that was a good jumping off point to discuss that and actually codify that. I would like to have that on the Dispensers Committee.
Yes, agreed. All right. Let's have it on. Any other requests?
About, John, you had a series of things, at the last meeting, you had a series of things. Was that?
Yes, Sharice, that should still be
It is.
in your hand?
Okay, so we've got that.
You're
So
good.
that's we're covered on that, okay.
A couple of those require some prep and some people to come
Right.
talk to us, so.
No worries, just want to make sure that was
on there.
Yeah,
in the works in there.
it's always been part of my little scheduling brain of how to squeeze them into different dates and what's all needed on those dates.
Where did we leave the interstate licensing kind of compact discussion? That has been asked of me a few times recently.
Great question.
I know we had the presentation.
Prior to them being instated, right? They hadn't actually had enough people come in and were effective at that point? They were still concepts?
No, I thought at the time they had some, like a number of participants, but they
I
hadn't.
didn't think they had enough that they were formally constituted.
Okay.
I'd have to go relook at the minutes from that meeting a couple years ago.
Yeah.
I can visually picture we were in that hearing room over there, so
Yep.
like 22.
I looked at it recently. I think that they weren't fully implemented when we were discussing it, and then there was questions about enforcement. I think the board wanted to wait for them to actually roll out the compact. But I think by now, I looked back on their website and it wasn't quite clear if they have rolled out. I couldn't find the database of licensees or stuff like that, so.
If nothing else, we can have an update from the compact. They're always happy, especially on a remote meeting, to come in and tell us all the updates and where they're at.
Yeah, I'd suggest we
do that.
Update from the compact.
I don't know if we need to add this to what I was talking before about the branch licensing, but I don't forget when it comes up. Would the supervisor also have to have a branch license for that same location that the trainee has a branch license for?
That's where I'm guessing that's gonna go. Just my knowledge.
I would think, but, you know, again, if we're gonna
But I'll put it as part
quantify
of the,
these
like,
things, yeah.
topic.
License,
Yeah. That seems to make sense, but just make sure that's all a part of the same discussion.
Yeah. I don't want to discuss it too much, but my guess is if
Yeah.
you, as a supervisor, already have that branch, your trainee doesn't need it because they're still under your supervision at a.
Well, so then that's the other question. If you have it, they don't need it, do both people need it?
How does it work?
Yeah.
Logistically
Yeah, right,
and under the law.
right.
Good point. Should add to the discussion.
You mentioned, Brian, some of the topics for the sundowning or sunsetting. Is you mentioned like the retiree, like kind of subcategory, are there, is that one of them?
The only ones that are usually board initiated are retired. There are other statuses that are more of you're suspended, you're on a family hold that the state can put on you because you failed to pay child support, so you're suspended until you fix that problem. So those other statuses are more penalty-based, or you're on military active duty. But retired is one that we can't just make up on our own unless given the authority. So
voluntarily canceling.
Well, that's actually a statute already, is that you can't voluntarily cancel your license. The board is the only one that has that option. And the reason we don't let people voluntarily cancel your license is because you may be voluntarily canceling to preemptively get rid of a complaint that might be coming our way. That's, when people call and say, cancel my license, they really get a hold put on there, so it stops mailing you the delinquencies, but it's not canceled. We can't cancel it that way. So that's not usually. I've also seen the Board of Psychology did it, and they created a way to do a voluntary surrender of the license without discipline. Currently, the board will take a voluntary surrender only in lieu of discipline, and that's actually still recorded and still we still notify the National Provider Data Bank of that voluntary surrender in lieu of discipline, so that you don't just hop on over to the next state and say, hey, license me. But some other boards, they have long-serving licensees populations. And one of the things was being able to surrender when there's a cognitive decline. They were looking for a way for them to surrender their license. A family member called, they said, my mother's got Alzheimer's, it's gotten worse. What can she do to fold up her practice and cancel her license, which leads to the conversation of, yeah, can't. And once we know there's a problem, you're headed a different direction instead of that, for lack of a better word, like being able to off-ramp in a dignified way, a non-penalty way. So that is one other area. We could have it both discussions. Oftentimes, I think most people would prefer just to retire, but that was something that the Board of Psychology looked at, and we could at least look at it as part of the retired discussion. Those are the only two I know of that are like, they're not just statute or a penalty phase or something.
Well, I have to start thinking about the retirement one, so I think I'm going to vote that direction.
All right. Any other further board discussion? I'd now like to ask the moderator to open WebEx for public comment. We still do not have any members of the public present with us.
We have opened up for public comment on future agenda items. This is your last opportunity to comment before we enter closed session. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users, dial *3 to raise your hand. We will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few moments now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes, please. Thank you. With regard to agenda item 19, pursuant to Government Code Section 11126C3, regarding the board meeting in closed session to discuss disciplinary matters, including proposed decisions, stipulated decisions, defaults, petitions for reductions in penalty, petitions for reconsideration, and remands. Since there are no disciplinary matters to discuss in closed session today, the board will now adjourn